to cross over between the two sectors. One of the things that that has provided a lot of opportunity is in the off season when fishermen have the ability to look at other avenues and to utilize their vessels and their skills. This is a great way to be able to do that in the off time. So we had discussions with tourism and looking at what we could be doing under our seasonal worker program to look at ways of extending, employment opportunities for the sector. So this is an opportunity to gather some information. We have a number of people on the call today that will be able to share their experiences, and also some of on the regulatory side of things to be able to share what that looks like as well, because that is a large component of the process, is to make sure that you have everything in line in order to move forward with it. So as Lisa had mentioned, our organization is very similar to hers when it comes to representing the interest of the fish harvesting, seafood processing, and aquaculture sectors in Nova Scotia. So we've been around since the early 90s and have been looking after human resource planning, attraction and retention into the sectors, along with training and safety for a number of years. So that's what our role has been in Nova Scotia as well. So I'll turn it back over to Lisa.
And thanks very much. Sorry, I was just, I am here with my screen of Tourism Strong behind us. I wanted to just point out as well that I'm really happy today to say that Ashley Mataya has joined us on this session. And Ashley, I have unmuted you. If you wished to say a word or two of hello and on behalf of Labor and Advanced Education as a partner, and we're deeply appreciative to the support of the department for this session.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I don't know if you can see me.
I think I just have just verbal for now is all.
Okay, perfect. No problem. No problem. Yeah. Hi from LAE, Labor and Advanced Education. We are really, really interested in this partnership, and it's really exactly what the province is looking to see, is more synergy between different sectors. So we're really excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to attend.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Ashley. That's great. So I'm going to just briefly, what I will do is bring up for a moment the agenda so that everybody can see sort of where we're headed to. And then after we take a quick look through the agenda, I do think it would be a nice idea for us to be able to identify who's on this call, who's who in this zoo, as they used to call it. And going from there, we will say that we would jump in, Judy, to your session and be able to get into that. So I'm just going to see if I can share my screen here. Share. So hopefully this is coming up okay for people to visually take a look at. And this afternoon we have a couple of different individuals and groups joining us. So download it already. Judy Lynch has joined us from Tourism Nova Scotia. She's going to be providing us with a bit of an overview on what the opportunity and demand is for this particular sector and the diversification that could come with that, the opportunity in the tourism product and experience side. And then we do have a couple of guest speakers who are going to share their stories of making the move from commercial fishing to experiential tourism and what that has looked like for their own operations. The first would be Tuscan Island Tours, and we have Lucien LeBlanc for joining us today from that operation. Hi, Lucien. And we also have Chandra Gavin joining us from Giant Bluefin Tuna Charters up in Valentine's Cove. So two very different types of operations, and yet very similar in terms of, I think, fundamentally what it is that the visitor is looking for, and that is, again, that marine-based experience. That's not to say that that's the only opportunity in tourism when it comes to these sides of things. So you might get inspired hearing from these guys about what else might be available for you to develop on your own entrepreneurial side of things. And at the end of the session as well, we're having a conversation with a panel of regulatory experts. So Lisa Fitzgerald has kindly pulled together a panel of great feedback and providers from Transport Canada, DFO, NSTHRC School of Fisheries. The Labour and Advanced Education is here with us as well, and NS Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, as well as we have Alan Griffith joining us from Fairway Insurance. And I know there's always lots of questions when it comes to the insurance and that regulatory and liability side of things. So those always take up lots of great questions for us as well. We will have opportunity at the end for some questions and discussion, but that's a bit of a brief overview of what we'll be covering for the afternoon. Now, I am going to just briefly look over here at, again, our group of participants, and I do want to give people a quick opportunity to at least sort of identify themselves so that we know who's in the room. So I know Ashley is here, and she's identified herself. Adam, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Adam Mugridge with Nova Scotia Fisheries and Aquaculture. I'm a coastal resource coordinator based out of Sydney, and I represent Victoria County and Cape Breton County.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Perfect. Alan Chandler? Alan for a moment, I can come back to him. Brandy McDonald, I know you're joining us from Fisheries Sector Council as well. How about Candace Nickerson?
Hi, I don't know if they realize that they're muted, Lisa.
That's okay. I'm trying to unmute for them, but we'll roll back to them. That's okay. Sorry, Candace, go ahead.
No, I'm here.
Was just going to have you introduce yourself.
I'm just from the Eastern Shore Fishermen's Protective Association. I'm just listening in. I'm getting some information for our members.
Perfect. That's great. And I don't want to miss anybody here, so if I have, let me know. But I think we've got Dale. That might be a little more complicated. Brandy's saying she's got she doesn't have a mic. She's the HR project officer for the Fisheries Sector Council, and she's just saying hello to everybody online. I think what I'll try and do is roll back again to a broader introductory afterwards. My apologies for that. And in the interest of time, maybe what I'll do is hand over to Judy and see if she can get us underway with a bit of an overview on the tourism opportunity and demand from Tourism Nova Scotia's perspective. Tourism Nova Scotia is the Crown Corporation responsible for brand Nova Scotia. And just like that, Judy, the queen of Zoom, has taken control of the screen, and she will get a presentation up and running for us. Welcome, Judy, and thank you for your partnership, as always, in being part of these sessions.
My pleasure, Lisa. Thank you very much. Can you just confirm, can you see my screen okay?
I can, and I'm just going to check if somebody wants to either comment in the Q&A or in the chat with regards to whether or not they can see okay.
Perfect. I can no longer see the chat, so I'll use you. Hopefully you can be my kind of guiding star there. If I'm missing any questions that pop up in the chat.
Perfect. I'll keep an eye on the questions, and I've got a few people commenting in. It looks great. So away you go. Thank you, Judy.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thanks so much. And thanks for having me today. And thank you for the invite. I'm glad to be here. I was privileged to be at the session that we had in Pubnico in, I think it was March, although it feels like many, many moons ago. So I'm grateful to be here today. And so thanks again. So as Lisa said, my name is Judy Lynch, and I'm with the Experience Development Team at Tourism Nova Scotia. And I'm happy to talk to you today a bit about creating visitor experiences. I'm just going to kind of kick things off because I know we want to hear about the regulatory side of things as well. So I just want to give you an idea of kind of who I am and how I can help, and what Tourism Nova Scotia's role is. So who are we? So as Lisa mentioned, we're the provincial marketing organization, and so our role is to help get the word out about how wonderful Nova Scotia is as a place to visit. So we do marketing, and traditionally we would be doing marketing in kind of further away destinations like Ontario, Quebec, Northeastern US, UK, Germany, and China. Those were our go-to markets for the last number of years. So unfortunately, things have changed with COVID-19. So we have pivoted and changed our direction, which I'll tell you a little about in a minute. As I mentioned, I'm part of the experience development team. It's just part of sector development and business development. And we have a great research team as well who guides all of our decisions. So all of our marketing campaigns, their experience development ideas and things like that, all of those directions are really looked at, how the research comes in, what visitors want to see, what their experiences were like while they were here in Nova Scotia, and what people say would motivate them to come here. And then we also we operate 6 provincial visitor information centers, the contact center, and novascotia.com to help visitors plan their trips and come here and have a great time. So as I mentioned, COVID-19 has caused a lot of us to pivot in a lot of different ways, just from even like I'm working from home now, and you know, we're all doing things a little bit differently. And so at Tourism Nova Scotia, as I mentioned, we would traditionally market some further away places, but we have pivoted and now we're marketing directly to Nova Scotians to really encourage people to get out there, travel around, explore our province, explore these beautiful nooks and crannies that we haven't been to in a long time, or maybe have never been. And so this is an example of one of our ads. There's no place like home, rediscover Nova Scotia, really trying to uncover and remind people what a wonderful place we have to visit right here at home. So that campaign is underway right now in Nova Scotia and throughout the province. And we also partner with some regional marketing organizations like Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association, Destination Cape Breton, to also kind of partner on our marketing and provide some logo shares, some image shares, and things like that to encourage people to look around in their own backyards. And starting on July 3rd, I think that was Friday, we also launched our marketing campaign in New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island to encourage that local drive market that has the ability to come come from a little further away to visit Nova Scotia, to visit us and to explore as well. So this is a video I'm going to play for you just to kind of show that we've started this We're Open campaign in New Brunswick and PEI to really show that Nova Scotia is open. We're ready for visitors. We're happy to have them here, and we're really excited to welcome them. So here, test my technical abilities to get this to play. Yeah, so that, whoops, oh, I didn't mean to play it again. There we go. So that video and associated social media campaigns, billboards, things like that started on Friday in New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island as well. So we're excited to see some new license plates in the province and to get people exploring and supporting our local businesses. So as I mentioned, part of the experience development team, we do at Tourism Nova Scotia, we have a focus on creating purchasable experiences for visitors, because we know whenever we travel, when I travel around our province or I travel further away, the experience I have and the people that I meet that really creates the memories and creates the stories that I tell my friends and family about, oh my goodness, you have to go to this place. I met this amazing person. I did this really cool thing. And we want to encourage businesses and operators and those who are interested in starting in tourism like you to do that, to create those experiences. So what is an experience? Well, the definition of it is it's a unique hands-on activity where a visitor learns something by doing something with someone who lives here. Really focused on being authentically Nova Scotian. So what can we put into an experience that really connects somebody with a person, a place, a story, a flavor that is truly Nova Scotian, that really highlights, like as Lisa mentioned, we have a great seafaring history. So what experiences can we create that really shows visitors and makes them feel like they got a little taste of it or a part of it? It is a grouping of activities at a single price point, so that does make it easier for visitors as well. So it's all packaged together for them, but it does make sure that it goes a little further than just a package. So it's not simply, you know, dinner and a movie. something that the visitor gets to do. Like you can see in the picture, she's getting to hold the lobster, compliment to the blue nose from Tuscan Island Tours. So, they get to really feel like they're a part of it. And by creating unique experiences, you as a business really get to set yourself apart and really focus on what your customers are looking for to really stand out in a sea of things to do. And as Lisa mentioned, there is a gap in Nova Scotia. We're surrounded by coastline, we're surrounded by beautiful ocean, a beautiful Bay of Fundy, but there are limited opportunities for visitors to get out on the water, whether they're coming from further away or they're, traveling an hour to try something new. There are only a few opportunities, and so it really is a gap in our market that we'd really like to encourage and work with you to create some new product to help and get visitors to see Nova Scotia from the water and to experience that wonderful history and culture that we have. So how do you take a product and make an experience? So, lobster is an extremely popular, it's a popular food here, it's a popular story here. Visitors really want to connect with it. So how do I take a lobster and how do I make that an experience? So you have the commodity, you have the fresh lobster, and maybe you create a product, which is a beautiful lobster dinner. And so, the visitor who purchases that dinner is purchasing a service from you, and how the table is set and the serving of the meal and the complimentary, or I shouldn't say complimentary, but the nice beverages that complement the food very well. But if I'm going to create an experience, perhaps I am paddling through a beautiful coastal scene. I am guided by a local expert who can tell me about the water, the species, the local environment. And then we come upon a beautiful shoreline or an island where I get to have a beautiful lobster roll picnic on a white sand beach. And so it's creating all that setting and that connection to where the food comes from, the experts who can tell me about it, the fact that I get to do something while I experience it that really heightens the experience for the visitor. It makes it more than just a lobster and more than just a meal that I purchased. It really makes me feel a connection to the place and the people and the food and flavors. So I wanted to show you, or I wanted to make sure, an experience, it doesn't have to be complex. It can be really simple. It can be a really simple story or connection. You just have to plan it really well and promote it well and really think about, who you're trying to attract with it. Just like no business markets to everyone, your experience should be marketed to everyone too, really thinking about what visitors are looking for and what visitors you're trying to attract. Whether it's families or couples or people who are interested in a higher end experience or luxury, or maybe somebody wants more connection to the hands-on part of things. So there's lots of different ways to do that again, I'm happy to help with. So I wanted to give you a couple examples of experiences that are already out there where businesses and tourism organizations have partnered together. So this is the Ocean Cayley and Seafood Adventure, which is offered by the Celtic Music Interpretive Center in Judic. And so with this experience, the goal is to really connect people to, the Celtic culture, have them learn some Cayley steps, to connect to the music of the area and to connect with the local seafood. So the Celtic Music Interpretive Center provided a beautiful lobster dinner. They taught people some wonderful step dancing. You got to meet the musicians, and then you got to try some Glenora single malt whiskey as you had your own personal Cayley on the back of a fishing boat. So the examples I'm going to show you show how different groups have partnered together to deliver an experience that, it wasn't so much that, one operator needed to do everything. They brought people together who were experts in what they did, partner to make it happen. So this experience is for sale out of Cape Breton, and visitors have had a wonderful time, experiencing lots of unique things that are really special to this specific area where it's offered. So then we have the Great Canadian Lobster Fishing Feast, and so this is offered by White Point Beach Resort. This is a great opportunity for visitors to really get a hands-on experience of what it's like to be on a lobster boat. They set out at dawn, they do a half-a-day fishing adventure, so they get to see the traps, they meet the captain, they meet part of the crew, they get to see what it's like to measure and band a lobster, and then they take their fresh catch back to White Point. They might have a nap where they set out at dawn, but then they have their personal lobster dinner with their catch of the day as well. So they get to experience a beautiful resort. They connect to the industry. They meet the actual fisherman, the actual captain of the boat, and have a wonderful time really seeing what it's truly like to be out there on the open sea. The third one I'm going to tell you about is the Sea to Table Lobster Adventure, which is by East Coast Outfitters, which is in the just outside of Halifax. So with this adventure, it's a sea kayaking adventure with a beautiful lobster dinner. But along the way of your sea kayaking adventure, you're going to pull on alongside a fishing boat. They're going to haul a lobster trap for you. Again, you're going to meet the crew and the captain, learn about the industry, hear some seafaring stories, so that when you sit down to eat that lobster dinner at the end of the day, you're truly going to have a greater appreciation for how it arrived on your plate. And when you're leaving Nova Scotia, you'll have such a great story to tell about the people you met, and again, have a deeper appreciation for the flavors that we're truly proud of. So again, I wanted to show you a few examples of how people have partnered to make it happen, because you don't have to do it all yourself. And there's lots of great operators out there who are looking for the perfect partner to help deliver experiences. And I wanted to share with you, again, a few opportunities and resources as well to help make it happen. So if you've got an idea, or you have access to a vessel, or you have access to a crew or a captain, how do you create an experience? Well, through Tourism Nova Scotia, I'm happy to work one-on-one with any potential operator or business, or answer any questions at any point. But also online, if you're more of a do-it-yourselfer, we do have the Experience Toolkit, which has 5 explainer videos and accompanying tips and worksheets to work through. So we really encourage you to think about why you're creating an experience. What is your business goal? What's going to set you apart? To look at the type of traveler and what's going to motivate them to choose your product or experience. We've got planning tools. We've got examples from industry of best practices for great hiking experiences, great historical experiences, lots of different examples to kind of get your creative juices flowing. And then we have insights on how to market it and how to sell it as well. And we're currently developing some tip sheets for the maritime market, as we know that's been a shift in the last number of months. So our tools are ever evolving, and we hope that you'll get in touch with any questions. So as I mentioned, the videos and tip sheets to help you get started, and we're happy to jump in at any point along the way. Online, we also have on our tourismns.ca, so that's our industry website where you can find lots of supports for your business. We have a dedicated COVID-19 update and resources page that our communications team is working hard to update on a regular basis as things become available. We've also started and launched a webinar series to help businesses look at e-commerce, marketing channels, free or low-cost ways to work on their online presence, because we know online was really important before COVID, but it's even more essential right now, where everyone has shifted to kind of doing that research ahead of time and finding out, it's important to put on any safety protocols you've put in place to encourage and help visitors feel safe and comfortable. So, we've tried to create that webinar series, and some webinars have gone by, but their recordings are available, and the tip sheets and resources are as well on our website. There's different business development guides, as I mentioned, research. So we do a visitor exit survey on a regular basis to really see what visitors have done while they're here, what they enjoyed, what they go back to do, how long they're spending in different regions of the province. And we're also currently undertaking new research to focus on the maritime market, which again, as I mentioned, was a shift for us. So new research is coming and will be shared with industry as it becomes available. And as through the presentation, you've noticed some images on my screen, and many of those come from our Barberstock online video and photography library. So anyone who's promoting Nova Scotia as a travel destination on a website, a brochure, they're welcome to use that library to use some of those images. So we encourage you to sign up for an account. I'll share my contact information as well in the chat once I'm done. So if you have any questions about accessing Barberstock or anything I've chatted about, you can reach out to me. NovaScotia.com is our consumer-facing website. So the one I mentioned previously was more for industry to look at to find resources for business and operators. NovaScotia.com is where we encourage everyone to put any product, business listings for visitors to look at to plan their trips. So they're free listings, and we want to get as much product on there as we can, because as I mentioned, online searching and online planning is going to be so vital in these coming months. So we encourage everyone to access that, look at their listings, keep them up to date, and we're happy to help you do that as well. So keep in touch with us. We've got an In Touch newsletter. Lots of information comes out via that. Like I mentioned, the webinar series, different research and statistics, and we're also on social media as well. So I encourage you to keep in touch with us. And I'll share my email and things like that. I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of who we are, briefly how we can help, but it goes so much further than that. So I really encourage you to reach out to chat with us, to ask for examples, there's a lot of questions that you may have that we've had from other operators. So whether we have the answer or we can put you in touch with somebody, we're really happy to help, and I hope you'll reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Judy, I just have to ask a couple of, I guess, brief questions if I could.
Yes, please do. I hope I didn't go too fast. Yeah, I hope I didn't go too fast. Lisa, it's so hard on these Zoom calls to know exactly how rapidly you're going or not.
It's a lot of information, and I know we will get asked quickly somewhere along the lines, because I always do when you do these sessions, and they're so informative. Is there a way for us for you to share that information? So can we send your PowerPoint out to the participants afterwards?
Absolutely. I will create a PDF of it. And do you want me to email it to you directly, Lisa?
Yeah, if you're good with that. And then
absolutely.
You is Lisa. I feel like it's my brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl, only it's my sister Lisa and my other sister Lisa Fitzgerald, and myself will send some follow-up communications out to the participants with a number of items. So everybody that's on today's webinar, you'll receive the PowerPoint presentation that's being used, and I will also include an evaluation form and provide opportunity for you to send not only feedback but additional questions, because as you said, Judy, this is an ongoing conversation. We know that this will not be a one-shot piece of information that answers everybody's questions. Sometimes people hear something today and then a couple of days later they get an idea in their mind. They're not sure where to take it to or what the next step might be for them necessarily. So we want to help inform and let people know also where their channels of communication will be moving forward, for sure.
Absolutely. I've added my email to the chat, so please encourage anyone to reach out with questions, and happy to assist and make connections where I can as well. So I'm going to mute myself so we can move on, but thank you for the opportunity to share, and I look forward to hearing from all these wonderful people that are on the call.
That's great. I will say for anybody that has questions to please make use of that Q&A or chat feature that is on this particular webinar. We'll make use of tracking that and making sure that we either call that speaker back or get that information pulled for you while we're on today's call. So if something comes up and you want to ask about it, don't hesitate to make use of those features so that you have access to them. I'd like to move on and invite our next speaker to share their experience with us. Making the decision to move from a commercial venture into a more experiential tourism side of things is a big decision. It's not something that comes lightly, but I think for our first guest speaker this afternoon, from the operator's perspective, that he may say it's in their blood to some extent, and a bit of their story in terms of maybe even in your genes. I'm not sure, Lucian. But we're very pleased to be joined today by Tuscan Island Tours. And the boys, as I say, from Tuscan Island have been providing quality marine-based tourism experiences for the last few years. But the history of working on the water is certainly something that goes much further back in their family heritage and in their connection to the region of the province. This operation is also a recipient of a Crystal Tourism Award of Excellence a couple of years ago, in recognition of the way that they protect the culture and also build in the environmental, sort of the sustainable side of things in their operation. So welcome to Lucien Leblanc, and thank you to Tuscan Island Tours for agreeing to come and share your story today. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. How are you?
Good, thanks. And I think your name is not unfamiliar to many of our participants today, but I think your story is one that, in terms of that balance of the moving between those two worlds of tourism and commercial fishing, is one that probably has a lot of good lessons. And maybe you can give people some good insight into what worked, what didn't work, and if you had to do it differently, would you do something differently moving into it at this point?
Well, I think that's a great way of putting it, because our story, I guess some would deem would be a successful one. I mean, we're still here, obviously, so that must be some show of some level of success, I guess. So I will dive into how we started and how we came where we're at today. But if there's any points you'd like for me to make, or if I'm missing something, but I believe we might be doing a Q&A after. Is that what I understood? Right. All right, so what I'll do is give you a brief history of who I am and why I'm here today. So as Lisa kindly mentioned, my name is Lucien Leblanc. I'm the owner of Tuscan Island Tours. We're located in Wedgeport, Nova Scotia, which is about 20 minutes south of Yarmouth. So the company itself composes of myself and a couple employees. I'm the owner, and basically my manager is my brother, Simon. He's been working with me a few years. But the story goes back a long ways. We operate what we call the Tuscan Island Tours and fishing charters now. The fishing charters comes a few years later. But we grew up as lobster fishermen on the southwestern shore here. And these islands here, I can't take credit for them. They're just plain beautiful. It's got nothing to do with us. We just take the people out there. So it's hard not to have a bad day out there. And I think we seen the need in 2014 to display that to the public, and we felt it was a good way to diversify from the commercial fishery. So we grew up as young men fishing from these islands. The history goes back some couple hundred years ago, when lobster fishing wasn't always done by big diesel vessels. It was done by rowboat, and communities were erected on a lot of these islands to be closer to the fishing grounds. I don't know if any of you have ever rowed to work, but when you row to work, the closer you can be to the work, the easier it is. So for a few hundred years, people from all over lived on these Tuscan Islands. Excuse me. They constructed what we call shanties. The official term for a shanty is a cottage that is used for commercial fishing. So up until the generation before me, people lived out there year round. For example, on the southeastern corner of Big Tuscan Island, both my uncles lived there until they were 5 and 7 years old. That's when my grandparents built a house on the mainland because their children need to go to school. There was no school per se on Big Tuscan Island. There definitely was some on Seal Island and various islands. So today, what's happening with the Tuscan Islands, a lot of these shanties are still there. They're slowly losing their usefulness as a commercial fishing hub because of the technology we have nowadays. As most of you are aware, our vessels now are quite a bit larger, quite a bit more advanced, and we don't technically fish from the Tuscan Islands year-round like we would have. Like my father's generation before me, they would have stayed there. If they weren't year-round residents of the island, my father would have stayed for most of the fishing season, save for maybe the month of February. By the way, I should mention our fishing season in our area is the lobster fishing area of 34, which starts essentially the first few days of December going until May 31st. So we have a winter fishery here. So what happened? Tuscan Island Tours have been tried somewhat before. I can't take credit for the idea. It's not an original idea. They had been tested out some many years ago. It didn't quite work. The world was a bigger place then, but now with GPS and social media and things like that, it's getting quite easy for tourists to find these little niche products that we've come to develop. So in 2014, I set out and I opened Tuscan Island Tours. And as Lisa may mention, hurdles were needed to be crossed. As I said, we do have a somewhat of a success story. However, it wasn't exactly easy to get where we are today. And the reason I say that is I don't want to paint a picture of it's always sunshine and roses. It's difficult navigating the system to make sure you're doing things completely legally, doing things professionally, and of course, the most important one, doing things safely. So in 2014 is when we first opened. We rented a vessel that year, which was a passenger vessel that had already been used for whale watching tours in Digby. So that was a learning experience on its own. We thought, since we weren't sure if the product was going to work well, we thought for the first year, why not rent a vessel instead of putting in the big dollars into building one. So I think that first summer we brought approximately 500 people into the Tuscan Islands. And for example, I think last summer, just in the first 2 weeks, we brought 500 people in the Tuscan Islands. So things have really changed for us since 2014. We began doing the tours. And as they got busier and as they progressed, that's when I hired my brother, because I couldn't possibly be the tour guide every single day. So I trained him and so forth. He's trained a few employees. So we've been taking people out since then. We leave the Wedgeport Wharf and we haul a couple lobster traps. And for an example, as a hurdle to overcome, I was quite interested in one of the last presentations here Judy just showed us, because what I found interesting is there are people out there, I believe, that are doing lobster type tours, and it looks as if, I don't know just how they go about through the rulings, but we're not permitted to fish during our off season. So that was one hurdle that I still haven't crossed that I would love to, is we have worked with DFO and acquired a permit to store lobster in a cage. So although it's one of my original lobster fishing traps, we have to board them up so that no lobster can get in and no lobster can get out. And the reason I'm telling you this is just to give you an example of something you may have to overcome if you're working with a similar tour. And that's a frustration of ours, because it doesn't take very long for the tourists to see that basically we're almost duping them. There's nothing I would want more than to show a tourist how to fill a bait bag full of bait, how to take the small lobster, measure them, show them that we have various measures in our fishery to ensure that we don't overfish, the measure being one of them. I would show them how to throw those little lobsters back, and then you could show them a large one. In our coastal areas, I'm sure overnight we would catch enough lobster to show them this. I've never mentioned that I want to retain any. It's not a retention thing. We're not trying to make money off of this, but I would love to be able to show my tourist a real actual fishing trap. So again, that's one of the hurdles that we've tried to cross, and I believe DFO's mandate is to protect our stocks, and I respect that wholeheartedly. But tourism may not be one of their primary focuses. So a more closer working relationship, I think, with tourism associations and entities such as Transport Canada and DFO could be useful for moving forward in the future. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but we leave the Wedgeport Wharf, we haul these two traps. Normally we keep a large one to show tourists, they really enjoy that. Then we do a historical tour throughout the Tuscan Islands, and we show the tourists the history, we explain them the stories, some of the more significant things that have happened in our area, such as treasure, shipwrecks, various humorous stories to try to lighten up the day. And as was mentioned earlier, last couple of years, an idea a friend of ours came up with, we blue nose people. So we've teamed up with the Ironworks distillery in Lunenburg, where they develop, total coincidence, my favorite rum. I mean, I am a seafarer, so rum is my drink of choice on the weekends. So we teamed up with them to give a shot glass of Ironworks Blue Nose rum. And or I shouldn't say my brother developed a really nice speech that we read out to them, and then they get a certificate. So it's sort of like Nova Scotia's play on being screeched in when you go to Newfoundland. So we paint their nose blue, give them a shot of rum. There's 4 size shot glass. I believe the deckhand, the mate, the skipper, and then finally the last 6-ounce shot glass is the shipwreck. And every once in a while, someone's brave enough to try the shipwreck. So we do that aboard the boat, loosens people up, gets a laugh. It's always a fun time. And then we stop on Big Tuscan Island. So as I mentioned, my family fished from Big Tuscan Islands for many years. This was a good blend of the commercial world helping us venture into the tourism world, because we already had a wharf there. Because we had a private wharf there where we would store our lobster traps. That was a major piece of infrastructure that likely, if I was just an aspiring tourism operator, I likely probably would have never spent the money to build the wharf. But because we had the lobster boat already, because we had the wharf, we thought it'd be fitting for tourists to be able to stop right on the Tuscan Islands, where all this commercial lobster fishing has happened for many years. So we stop at our old family seaside shanty where my father and brothers fish from. We serve seafood chowder for lunch. And since my brother's such a great musician, on the way home, because we take the same track, that there's no other option, we have to take the same track we chose to get to the Tuscan Islands. To change up the day, he plays old seaside shanty songs on the vessel. So it's quite a diverse tour. It started with us leasing a vessel, and then that transitioned into a conversation we needed to have with our family, because believe it or not, we are the boat builders as well. My father is a boat builder here in the area, and we decided it was time to build a new vessel, because our lobster fishing vessel was sort of becoming older and technology was moving quite a bit faster than the boats are being built. We decided to pull the trigger. We hired a consulting company, may not be the right term, but we hired a company, Marine Architectures in Halifax, to help us navigate the, well, for lack of better terms, extremely complicated system of developing a vessel that meets all Transport Canada requirements to carry passengers. I should mention over 12 passengers. There's a major difference if you're carrying less than 12 or more than 12. So we went ahead with that. That I would mention is probably the most difficult hurdle I've had to overcome, when we chose to do this business venture. The building of the boat has to be designed and meet the specifications set out by Transport Canada. They're extremely complex, and it was nothing short of a major headache. So that was a hurdle we had to cross. I'm very happy to say that since then it's been figured out. Took about 3 years actually since the vessel had been built to basically us having a turnkey operation every year, and there was a lot of learning on our part. I'm not trying to place the blame on anyone else, but now that things run a little smoother, it's a lot less stressful. So we built that vessel 5 years ago, and we've been doing that regular tour ever since. So sort of where the fishing charters come in is sort of how I'm seeing, this group joining in today. We noticed there was a lack of product, lack of service out there that we were getting requests from. So we ran a regular tour, but we get the call very often, can you guys take people fishing? We see you have a boat, we see you do tours. And the question got so loud to us that after a while I said, I love fishing. So that's when our company morphed. I built a couple smaller vessels, I purchased a couple smaller vessels. And again, when you're carrying less than 12 passengers, it's much easier to navigate the Transport Canada laws. So because these smaller fishing charter vessels are less than 12 people, it was much easier. So now we do cod and haddock charters outside of Wedgeport. We also have a Yarmouth Harbor Tour boat now that this summer we tested it out last summer, it worked well. We'll be offering shark, hook, and release charters, which we worked with DFO to develop a license so that we can do that and possibly tag some of the sharks that we'll be releasing. So that was a good partnership that we did with DFO. The local office here in Yarmouth was super helpful. I'd have to tip my hat to them. They really helped us in acquiring that license. So we're excited to be announcing that this summer. And the fishing charters here in Wedgeport, cod and haddock, have been really successful. It's been really fun. So lastly, one of our newer products, sort of like people always asking us, well, who can take us fishing here in southwestern Nova Scotia? We take people out to the Tuscan Islands, and they'd ask how they could possibly stay the night. They really respected the beauty. They really enjoyed it. So because we had a family shanty, it's owned by my father's brothers as well as my father's, the whole family, we can't rent it out. Obviously, we can't rent out something that's not ours. So because we're not fishing from the Tuscan Islands so much anymore, I had an old bait cooler there, and this bait cooler was 12 by 24. And because now when we're fishing, we go out for 5-6 days at a time now on our newer vessel. There was no need to store bait on the Tuscan Islands anymore, because when it's time to come ashore now, we don't just stop at the Tuscan Islands. We will go right to mainland where our bait's waiting for us. So I took that bait cooler and I doubled it in size. I shouldn't say myself. I hired people to do it. So this bait cooler is now 24 by 24 with an upstairs, and it's a beautiful cottage. You never know you're sitting in a bait cooler, or an old bait cooler, I should say. So now we have a rental property on the Tuscan Islands that's been very successful. So we've morphed and we've changed our company as time progressed, because we've seen a need for more products in our area, which I'm kind of excited. I'm very thankful for you guys to have me here today to talk about this, because I feel, there we go. I believe Lisa's sharing our website. That reminds me I need to update a few pictures because I got some nicer ones now, but this does give you the gist of it. This is our cottage rental. Used to be a bait cooler, used to be where I froze my bait, and we have customers there this week actually. So as I was mentioning, I'm very thankful for you guys who have invited me here, because I feel like I could only benefit from having more authentic products in the province. I don't want to steer away from typical tourism operators and say that their products aren't authentic. It's just I feel when the locals here are asked what is there to do around here, the options and the answers aren't as extensive as one would think. It seems to me we've gotten the message quite often that when you go to Maine, when you go to Massachusetts, you know, there's a little, on every corner, on every wharf, there's a fishing charter, there's a little shack that's cooking lobster, there's a little shack selling fresh seafood. And when people get off the ferry here in Yarmouth and they ask, you know, what are you guys all about here in Nova Scotia? Well, everyone answers the ocean. And we've been a little bit discouraged as time progressed that we don't have more options of ocean related authentic products. I feel when I travel, I want to meet the real people, and that's really the message we try to show our customers, is that we're not just people with a boat who are looking to pump in as many people as we can. We're really trying to show them who we are. And another piece of advice I feel that we've learned over the years is having a customizable product has really helped people feel as if they're not just a number on a page, another ticket on the ticket book. We do fishing charters, but we get asked, can we stop on a shoreline and have a clam boil? Or can we cook our fish at your cottage on the Tuscan Islands? And we always say yes. I try my best. My brother and I both try to always say yes when we have a request, because I feel that's been very successful for us. And as I mentioned, when I travel, I feel like I want the same experience. So that's start to finish. That's where 2014 brought me here today. So again, Lisa, thanks for having me. I believe that's my story. So I'll pass it back to Lisa, and I'll be here if we have any questions at all.
Thank you so much, Lucienne. And I was delayed in thinking about getting that website brought up. So hopefully that will also spur some folks to go and check out your site. I know
Certainly.
there are a couple of questions coming forward. And what I'm going to suggest actually is I am keeping track of them. And I'm going to suggest that we have both of our operators present, and then I will have the two of you available to respond to some of the questions that I'm seeing come up through the chat function here. Lots of questions already about, you know, how are you dealing with things like the insurance side of things, and what about different approaches in terms of having the experience of baiting the pot differently, that sort of thing. So the process. So I'm going to hold off on peppering you with the questions that are there right now, Lucienne, and we'll have Chandra present, and then the two of you will have the Q&A sort of together. We'll moderate for you. Okay, perfect. Awesome. That's great. So, Chandra, I'm going to bring up your screen for you, and I know that I don't have a formal bio for you, other than to say that anytime that somebody has said to me, they have mentioned the whole concept of giant, you know, the giant tuna bluefin fishing experience, that your operation is right at the top of the list in terms of what people think of when they think of that experience. And part of that, again, I know comes from your family's connection to this operation, but also I think because you are well known as well for, I think, being a record holder yourself when it comes to this kind of experience. So you're not just the business operator, you're also a very accomplished fisher person in your own right. So I'd like to welcome Chandra Gauvin from Giant Bluefin Tuna Charters, located in Valentine's Cove up in northern Nova Scotia, and she's going to share her experience and story of their operation with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to assume that you can and tell me if you can't. So just like a tiny quick note, I was looking at the spelling of my last name, and Govan is a really common last name, but that's not mine. So mine is actually Gavin with no U.
Sorry about that. That's on me.
No, that's okay. I was laughing when you pronounced it because Govan is actually the correct pronunciation of that one. Anyway, regardless of that, I put together a little slideshow that Lisa's going to advance through for me. And Lisa, I'll tell you whenever I want you to change it.
Sure.
It's really just for reference. I didn't do anything formal in terms of something that I'm going to speak about, pretty much the same as Lucian. This is kind of off the cuff to give you an idea of what it's been like for us. And these visuals will help you maybe get an idea of what we're doing on our end. So my husband, John, and I are both commercial fishermen. We've been together nearly 30 years. We have, we now commercially fish together. I have some really weird feedback on my microphone. I'm not sure, or on my headset. I'm not sure what it is.
Most people are muted. I've muted myself, and most people are muted as
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to carry on. So John and I fish together. I was a hairdresser by trade before going into the fishing industry with my husband. So this isn't something that is natural to me. It's natural to him. His family is a fishing family, multi-generational. I just married into it. I am really comfortable speaking and dealing with the public, that kind of thing. So being on the boat and talking to tourists has kind of come naturally to me. The fishing part of it, I've had to work at a little bit. I did have to leave hairdressing about 15 years ago for reasons with my arms, and so I went on the boat with John, and we lobster fish May and June here in northern Nova Scotia. So we would be in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And actually, if you want to advance one slide, Lisa, you'll see this is the, to give you an idea, this is the wharf that we fish out of. It's Ballantyne's Cove. It is mostly commercial. As you can see there is a little bit of pleasure boating happening here as well. We have a bluefin tuna interpretive center. So similar to Lucian being from Wedgeport, which is considered like the tuna capital of the world. We're Ballantyne's Cove. We also consider ourselves the tuna capital of the world. Well, there's a few of us that vie for that title. If you advance one slide, Lisa, the area that we fish in is if you'll see here, the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where all those little red marks are, we're in a pretty sheltered area. So where Lucian would be fishing down around the bottom of Nova Scotia in the bottom left-hand corner of that screen, the area that we're in is that little blue dot up above Antigonish, and we fish and all our activity takes place in this area, which is pretty sheltered, and it looks totally different from the South Shore. The species that we have to work with here, much different. So where Lucian's been able to offer like cod and haddock fishing, I don't have those fish. I can't offer those types of things. So we do have to work with whatever we've got for species in that area. If you want to advance one screen, Lisa, what we do have, a claim to fame, is the largest tuna ever caught. That was caught not far from Antigonish. And those fish traditionally come to our area every year. They're a migratory fish. They go down the Gulf of St. Lawrence, or the Gulf of Mexico, sorry. In the winter, they come back up here every summer. They're always here. This is something that this is like our little niche. So as a location, we can claim the biggest bluefin in the world, bigger than pretty much anywhere else. So that kind of sparked our tours. We have been commercially harvesting bluefin for decades. Over the last few years, prices have gone down, quotas have gone down, and we really needed to look at a way to make more money with what we had, because we weren't going to get any more than what we have. So we had to just make it accomplish more. So we started petitioning Department of Fisheries and Oceans back in 2009 to give us a catch and release fishery. And we were successful in acquiring that in 2010. Since that time, we have been working with them every year, developing what we got. So it started looking different than it does today. We've been doing it for 10 years now. And when Lucian was talking before about hurdles that we face when we're trying to transition between being a commercial fisherman to suddenly adding in tourism. And I noticed somebody's comment on there about, why can't you just do whatever with, why can't you just show the people whatever? When you're combining the two, you're still working under Fisheries and Oceans rules and regulations. So can't just do whatever we want. We have to play by their books. We have to go in under their rules, their regulations, whatever they're allowing us to do in whatever fashion or however that may look. So we can't just do anything or we can't do whatever. So we were able to get this catch and release fishery. It has been modified slowly over the last 10 years to get to the point where we're at now. We are regulated by season. So we are open for this particular type of fishing at the beginning of August. We shut down the end of October. And so we've got that window to work with for those particular tours. If you want to advance one screen, Lisa, because of these limitations with seasons and catch limits and whatever kind of restrictions are on us, we did very similar to Lucian. We needed a boat that was designed to be tourist friendly. Normally, like our old fishing boat was a great boat, but it wasn't something that I would take tourists on and say, here, give me some big bucks and I'm going to take you out on my old fishing boat that, might look dirty or you'd be wondering if it was kind of sketchy. So we built a new boat, or had one built back in 2014-15. And they cost a ton of money. Like everybody's, if anybody's thinking about getting into this, you're talking like house mortgage kind of business here or more. So when we built that boat, we really were looking at it going, we can't just build this boat and then try and pay for it with, maybe 30 days tuna chartering or 40 days of tuna chartering. So we started looking at what else can we do besides that. So we branched out into offering anything we could think of that might get people out on the water and bring in income for us. So we've done birthday parties, we've done mackerel fishing tours, sunset cruises, we've taken people out to watch the sunset for their 25th anniversary while they drank a bottle of champagne. We did a burial at sea. We've pretty much anything that somebody wants, we will provide. So we're a little bit different from Lucian in that, and I'm assuming this now because he didn't specify this, we don't do regular daily departures. We are private bookings only and completely flexible. So if somebody calls and wants to go at 9 a.m. on Tuesday and somebody else wants to go at 10:45 on Wednesday and somebody else wants to go at 2:30 on Thursday, or if we don't want to work on Friday, all of those things are flexible for us. We haven't dove in head first and made it and made a really solid business out of it yet. We are still more commercial fishermen than we are tourism, because we're not 100% sure how far we want to get into it. And I think that's, like, I was admiring you, Lucian, when you were talking about all the things that you guys have done, and really, like, they're extraordinary. But you have to really be committed to getting in and offering those things consistently and regularly. And we're still a little bit, I don't want to say fly by the seat of our pants. We're committed to the tuna charters. The other parts of it are almost like a little bit of fun for us, because we have the boat in the water, because it should be making more money. We don't want it to just sit there. We're doing extra things in the summertime, but not, we're definitely not even tapping into our full potential with it yet, at all. And I think just because we're exploring it a little bit. If you want to advance one screen there, Lisa. Our specialty, though, this catch and release for bluefin, is, because we were heavily involved in tuna anyway, this is where we've really dug into and focused on. So we have catch and release permit. It goes along with our commercial harvesting permit. So if you didn't have a commercial tuna license to begin with, you would not be able to do the catch and release. These are other things, again, that are connected to DFO, that, you know, you don't have a choice but to be tied into these rules and guidelines and stuff. They're out of everybody's control. So we bring people out for full day high-end charters. They are all inclusive. So people pay us, I would say, significant amounts of money to go out and do this. And we make sure that the level of service and the quality of our product is way up here, so that when people see the price tag and they have the experience, they don't even question it for a second, that it seems like a lot of money, because the costs involved in doing these things are really, really high. So we provide all of the food, all of the tackle, bait, fuel, all of the fishing equipment, everything. They just step on the boat with a camera and a change of clothes, and the rest is on us. And we do 3 meals on the boat. We provide all the beverages, some of it's alcoholic beverages, and all of our tours are private, customized tours. So we never put strangers together on the boat. It's your group only. So if you only have 2 guys and you tell me, can you add us to another group so that it makes the price more affordable? We don't do that, because we want everybody's experience to be perfect. So if you bring a guy with you and he's really obnoxious, he's the guy you brought with you. You knew ahead of time that he was really obnoxious. It's not some stranger that comes in and ruins your day on you, because most people are with us for 12 hours at least. Because of the area that we're fishing in, we're not ever more than 20 miles from land in some direction or another. And that's just unique to the Gulf of St. Lawrence area that we're in. So we're fortunate with weather. We're very fortunate with travel times, that they're not really extensive. We may only have to travel 5 minutes to find fish. We may have to travel an hour to find fish. It's not anything really extreme. And like I said, that's unique to the area that we're in. We try and make it an experience that is authentic to everybody. So the clients participate in the fishing, in all aspects of the fishing, if they want to. So they're not obligated to. But if you advance one screen, Lisa, we catch our own bait. And the clients will either be on board with us watching us do that, or they will be actually taking part in doing it. So we'll haul nets for herring, we'll catch live mackerel to fill the live well. We do that all day long. And we let the clients do those things so they get to enjoy it. But they're not obligated to do it. We have a full crew that does all of that. Some of them like to get right into it and help us, and others just want to stand back and watch and see how it goes. But everything is based around the client's wants, their desires. They basically call the shots with the exception of, you know, what our rules and regulations are. If you advance one screen, we offer a couple of different types of fishing methods. They're all sport fishing. So we don't fish on our charters the way we commercially fish on our own. So all of our fishing would be considered sporting methods. So, you know, you can see like either the fighting chair or stand-up gear. We don't put the rod in the gunnel and let clients fight a fish out of the gunnel, because it's really not, that's not a sporting way to catch a tuna. It's, you know, that's your boat fighting the fish and not your person. So we will follow like IGFA guidelines if we need to, if the client wants us to, things like that. Do you want to advance one screen for me, Lisa? We try and make sure that everybody knows what they're doing. So if they're not familiar with fishing, we'll teach them what to do beforehand. If they are familiar with it, we basically are just there, you know, on the sidelines guiding them. But when they come out fishing with us, it becomes, even though it's like one man against fish kind of situation, it becomes an event for everybody on the boat. So whenever we're fighting a fish, as you can see in these photos, everyone on the boat is gathered around as if they're a part of it, even though only one guy is actually fighting that fish. So it makes for a situation that is lots of camaraderie and exciting experience. We are limited by our regulations that we can only catch and release 3 fish in one day. We do take up to 6 people on one of these tours. So 3 out of 6 people are not going to get to fight a fish during the day. That's why it tends to look a bit like this, where you'll see everybody gathered around and kind of participating. But it never, you know, those regulations don't ever seem to be a problem with clients. We did start out with only 1 fish per day. That was one of the things that we petitioned year after year with DFO until we got that change to lighten it up a little bit and give us a little more to work with. When you consider that you're going to do some kind of a fishing excursion with clients, you've got to be able to sell whatever you're thinking about. You've got to have something to work with. And when we started out with 1 fish per day, we really didn't have something that we could easily sell. You know, it's hard to get people to fly in from around the world for 1 fish per day. So those are things that, you know, they've been huge hurdles that we've had to overcome over 10 years. If you advance through the next couple of slides, Lisa, and you can go through them kind of slowly, I guess. We've, as I said before, we had kind of broadened things out a little bit to make money in a little bit of a different way. And you can see here just people basically enjoying being on the water. Some of the challenges we've found with these things are managing the amount of time that you spend on the water with the clients and filling that time with stuff to do. And now I appreciate it when Lucian was saying, you know, like when you travel out, you do this first, and then you do this next, and then you go here, and then on the way back, because you're taking the same route back, you've got to fill that time with something else. Those are things that I think you really have to consider when you're going to take people out. Having quiet time might be okay. Like for the 25th anniversary couple that we had, we literally went inside the cabin and shut the door. I let them choose the music that they wanted to put on the satellite radio, and we left them outside by themselves that whole tour, because that's what they wanted, was just to be alone. But sometimes people want to talk to you the whole time, so you've got to have stuff to talk about. You've got to have stories to tell. You need to be comfortable telling them. And then sometimes people, we've occasionally had people that were not as excited or about you know, riding around in a boat. To us, it's really cool all the time. Some people are kind of, like I actually had somebody say, you know, are you sure there's any whales out here? I'm like, oh my God, there are challenges like that that you need to be able to deal with. You know, like I stopped advertising whale tours. We don't do whale tours. We'll do sightseeing tours so that you might see whales, you might see seals, you might see birds, you might see nothing. You just don't know. It's not like I can call them up and plan that they're all going to be there at 2 o'clock. These are challenges that you need to be able to deal with when they're kind of thrown at you while you're out on the water, and somebody literally is like, you know, you guys don't have any wildlife here, do you? This kind of thing is not really for everyone. So I've watched guys in the last 10 years get into this, dip their toes a little bit, decide, you know what, this is not for me. And I think what people really need to acknowledge is that you're going into the service industry. When you're in commercial fishing, you're on your own, you and your crew, you're doing your daily work, whatever you're fishing, you're going through the motions, and it's just you and your crew. So you're quite comfortable around those people. There might be a lot of swearing taking place on board. People might get frustrated or cranky. These are things that you need to be able to manage and deal with. And if you're getting into the service industry in particular, it was something I was very comfortable with because I was a hairdresser. I was in the service industry. Some of the fishermen that tried this, they were like, I don't want somebody coming up to me and saying, go get me a coffee, please. So there are aspects of that I think people really need to think about and decide, do I want to be doing this? Am I going to be able to talk? Am I going to be able to refine my image so that I get rid of any rough sailor edges? And you don't want to erase it completely, because you do want these things to be authentic, but at the same time, you have to remember what you're doing. You've got tourists, you have people that you don't know that are from away on your boat, and so I find it's a real delicate balance, and it has been a big challenge. So to give you an example, we formed an association back in 2012, and our membership, when we first started doing this, some of the guys were like, oh, you know, we have to be careful. We don't want this to blow open to all tuna commercial fishermen, because then you'll have hundreds and hundreds of people that are offering these tours. And it was DFO actually kind of pointing that out, going, are you going to cap this? Are you going to let just any tuna fisherman do this? And we kind of made the point, like, this will cap itself. This is going to be the type of thing that it is not going to explode into having 500 charter boats all of a sudden. And we were right. Our numbers in our membership have barely changed in 10 years. We go up a couple of guys, we'll go down a couple of guys, we'll go up 1 or 2, maybe 3, drop 2. Every year it's like that. And it seems like they are weeding themselves out. The guys that are sticking with it are the ones that are committed to making a name for themselves. And you'll see in the next, these images now are to give you an idea of the kind of thing that people are looking for. They want to come to the province. They want to see what it looks like for us. They want to know, what is it like in your life, in your shoes, where you live. That's the kind of thing that they're looking for. And that's the kind of thing that they're expecting you to show them. And then you have to find that delicate balance of, how do I show them that and keep it authentic, but, you know, just fill all those check boxes. And so you know, we are willing to do whatever we have to do. This, for example, was a lobster dinner that we put on for clients. They wanted to know what it was like to eat, you know, break lobsters apart. So we got lobsters, taught them how to cook them, taught them how to shell them, all that stuff. So we made experiences out of these things. So we're willing to do whatever we need to do to give people insight into what it's like in our lives. All of this is what our regular lives look like. And so that seems to be what people kind of want it to see as well. What does it look like for you? And so we did those things, but a big part of making this transition, and you can pause on this one for a second, Lisa. A big part of making this transition is finding people and having people find you. So just because you decide that you want to become a tour boat operator doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to come. So you need, in our particular instant, or our particular example, we needed to make a name for ourselves. And we needed people to be able to find us. So we started doing things, and this particular slide is one of them, to draw attention as far reaching as we possibly could, so that people would hear our name and hear it again and hear it again and hear it again. Because there are other people in our area doing the same thing as we are. I need people to know my name, not my name in particular, but John's name. And I need them to think of us and pick us over the other guy. So that's kind of, that's something that people need to think about. How are people going to find you? And why are they going to choose you? And are they going to remember you? And you can advance to the next couple of slides, Lisa, the next two. So these are things that we did to draw attention and give us a name. So we had the ability to catch tuna and kill them. So we started doing record attempts. We decided we were going to try and break world records. Every time we do this, I get advertising that I could never, ever afford. So it's difficult sometimes to, I guess, determine, like, we didn't necessarily have budgets, big budgets for advertising. So I was kind of trying to be creative and say, well, what can I do to advertise? Where am I going to get our name out or put the word out that we're doing these things? And this is the kind of stuff that we opted to do. We will do fishing trips, say, for example, to Costa Rica and talk about it. We try and make a point of having stuff to talk about online so that people keep hearing about us, whether we're doing tuna chartering or doing something else. We're still being talked about, or we're still, we've got stuff going on. We did this here, for example, was a 70-year-old tuna reel and a bamboo rod, and the guy that owns it from California wanted to come and catch a bluefin. So we were like, you know what, bring it up, let's do it. It's like a 26-pound reel. So this guy did this, and this was just promo that we could blow up. So you need to kind of separate yourself from the rest of the pack in some way, shape, or form. Even though the competition is not really steep here in Nova Scotia right now, like when Lisa Fitzgerald mentioned, or somebody had mentioned earlier, that there is a huge gap in these services. There really is. Hardly anybody is doing any of this stuff right now. So you need to kind of set yourself apart early on and stand out, because when people do start doing this stuff, you need your name known. So I think that some of this has been, some of it has been really challenging and rewarding, but it's, it isn't for everyone. This last slide here, this one here, Lisa, I'll get you to hold on it for a second, was to give you an idea of some of the places you can go if you're looking for some help. So Grossmorn Institute for Sustainable Tourism, that is an organization that John and I became connected with through Destination Eastern and Northumberland Shores. We went to the Grossmorn Institute in Newfoundland and did a week-long sustainable ecotourism course. It would be worthwhile for anyone considering getting into this kind of thing to, if you're not familiar with the service industry or the tourism industry or anything like that, you should find out a little bit about it before you decide you want to get into something like that. Tie-ins as well, like know your organizations, find out what they are, reach out to them, lean on them. Like Coastal Nova Scotia is part of, it's the I guess the public front of Destination Eastern and Northumberland Shores, which is a group that I've become connected with. So I now sit on the board for Dean's as a director, and that has helped me connect with other people in the tourism industry. Something else that you need to consider if you're going to get into doing tourism from fishing, find out who else is in tourism. You are probably going to need partners or connections with other people. You need to know who they are. You need them to know what you have to offer, and you may need what they have to offer, whether it's accommodations, restaurants, things like that. I keep a long list of tourism resources that I use at my disposal with my clients for tuna chartering, so that if we can't go out fishing because it's stormy, what else are my clients going to do? So I look at my clients almost like their family. And when they plan their trip, they plan it closely with me, so that we're going over menus. What are we going to eat on the boat today? Does anybody have any food allergies? All of these things. And then, as I said, if it storms and we can't go fishing, what are they going to do? I need to know. I need to be able to tell them, like, drive around the Cabot trailer, or I'm going to hook you up with this guy who's going to take you fly fishing for salmon, or somebody who's going to take you hunting, or, you know, we look after our clients like their family, so that they want to come back all the time. And we work really hard to make their experience top notch. We want them to remember that they came to Nova Scotia and this happened in Nova Scotia. So we make sure that we're better than other provinces and what they have to offer. We try not to cutthroat each other. And we work hard with the other operators doing the same thing as we are, so that we're all offering a really good product. And it's concerning if somebody is offering something kind of crappy or subpar, because we want everyone, like everybody that comes in here has an experience that they then leave and they talk about. And when they leave and talk about something bad, they're not just talking about your particular one. They might be talking about Nova Scotia in general. So you want to consider, what kind of a face are you putting out there? It affects everybody as a whole, not just your particular business. So those are things that I think it's important for people. These are things that have occurred to us over our 10 years. These are things that I've seen or experienced or heard about, where I'm like, you know what, that was important to note, that, you know, that guy over there took his clients out and then ran out of fuel while he was out on the water. And I'm like, note to self, don't ever run out of fuel. These are things that will look badly on other people. And you don't want to be putting out a bad name or a bad face, considering your whole province. We're a pretty small province, particularly in the tuna charter industry. Word gets around really fast. So you want to think about those kind of things when you're deciding, do I want to get into this? And like, don't go doing something like, don't do half a job. Do, like, offer something that is good quality and that will make people talk about how awesome it was. I can't think of anything else that I really want to say. I could probably talk for hours, but probably going to leave it there. And then I'd prefer maybe if people had questions and they had anything specific they wanted to ask, that, you know, we kind of go about it that way. Good Lord, look at the notes.
It's great. There's been, you both have generated a lot of great feedback so far. So first of all, thank you both very much for that very frank sort of assessment of how you got to where you are now. You know, tourism is one of those sectors, I think, that people think, well, you know, it's just, you know, having a good time. It's people on vacation. How hard can it be? And so there's this I think perception. We see it a lot in operators in other sectors, where they think, you know, well, it's just taking care of people when they're on holiday, and it's all, you know, roses and sunshine, and people are always in a good mood and things always go well. And we know that's not always the case. But I think what you've brought up, both of you, have been sort of some of those really important considerations around going into this with eyes wide open around, you know, how do I want to approach it in terms of as an element potential of diversification of my business? And beyond that, is there an opportunity for exploring it and opening up the discussion and the opportunities in some cases without necessarily investing so heavily into it that if I decide it's not something I want to continue on, that I haven't necessarily, I don't want to see anybody lose their shirt, so to speak. The last thing that I wanted to sort of bring up is that there's been, I think, a lot of challenges that both of you have faced when it comes to, and this may be a bit of a common theme, I think, around how do you adapt within the regulatory framework that exists for commercial operators that are moving into the tourism recreational side of things. And so a couple of things that I'm seeing here, for example, is, early on, Lucian, it was commented about the sort of sharing, showing the fishing trap and the complication and the length of time it took to, for example, to get to a point of even being able to haul up a trap and show it as a demo and that sort of thing. And so the whole concept of how that comes about, I think, is something that can be a bit of a challenge. I know Carrie is on this call, and it's great to have you on the call with us today, Carrie. I'm just going to bring up your specific comment, which was, if the purpose is to have authentic experiences, why not bait the pot, explaining the bait being used, haul the pot, showing them what you can keep and what can go back with the tourists instead of stocking the pot. And Carrie's point is, he's like, this is asinine, because considering the investment that you've got all this entrepreneurial drive, you're focused on sharing Acadian heritage and fishing heritage, and the challenge is that sometimes it feels like, I think, those regulatory requirements are almost blocking the capacity for the tourism side of your operation to grow. So Lucian or Chandra, do you want to sort of speak to that sort of challenge side of things?
Well, actually, before Lucian chimes in, I was going to mention, you were asking earlier, Lucian, about, are other people able to do this in other areas? And no, they're not. Even up here, I know you're in the Maritimes region, I'm in the Gulf region. That particular thing is something that I've been looking for as well. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten into doing a lobster tour, because it isn't authentic. You literally have to buy the lobsters, you have to plant them in the lobster trap, put the lobster trap down on the bottom, go get your clients, sail them out, haul it up, and be like, surprise, look what we've got here, and then put the pot back and go back in and eat them. You have to have a receipt on board to show that you purchased those lobsters, so that if DFO comes and says, hey, where'd you get those lobsters out of season? You're able to prove, I purchased these at Sobeys. And so there's nothing authentic about that. There are no other creatures in the lobster trap, because nothing can get in and nothing can get out. You can't show sculpins, you can't show lumpfish or eels or rock cod or rock crab or anything. And so, Lucian, if you're ever interested in doing some work on DFO on this, I'd be totally down to like tag team and try and get something, because I do. Absolutely.
So yeah, I'll elaborate a bit on that. And for lack of better terms, Carrie is 100% correct. It is a little bit asinine that we can't do that. I've started from the top to the bottom, and I've reversed that, started from the bottom to the top, asked what the issues were. Technically, at the end of the day, DFO's mandate is stock assessments, protection of stocks. In no part of my proposal was I ever intending to retain any of these lobsters. Personally, as a fisherman,
correct.
It would be insulting to other fishermen if I had some special license where I could fish during the summer. So I wasn't asking for retention. I was just asking to bait a trap, to show the ins and outs, how it works. And at the end, when everything's all said and done, the explanations are done, the small, the large, the medium lobsters all go back. And, I was willing to make sure that trap gets checked every day or every second day or whatnot. I even, as I mentioned, I've started from the top and I just received no as an answer. Then I started from the bottom, and I went to C&P. I went to the actual fishery officers themselves, not legislation, not anything at the top. And pardon me. So the perspective I received from fishery officers was they're out there anyway, patrolling. We do have a couple indigenous fishers here in southwestern Nova. They're permitted to bait and fish commercially 3 traps during our off season. So we have authorities in the area monitoring that situation very closely. So 1 extra trap, next to theirs, was absolutely no concerns of theirs. And quite frankly, as Chandra's putting it, it's not authentic. It's part of my tour. I do it because people at least get to see how the hauler works and gets the idea. And I've been called out by some people before on my tour saying, so you cage those lobsters up and you keep them there all summer. And I've had to develop clever responses to these questions because that's what I am doing. I originally asked, to be filtering lobsters in and out, basically to give them a free feed of bait. But instead, we keep a couple lobsters. We don't do the dinner tour. The lobsters we're eating on our chowder is not the same lobsters that's in the trap. So they just stay there. Every maybe 3 weeks, I will filter them out, put another couple in there to make sure they're healthy, and then go home and have them for supper. But yeah, it's been tough, and not by lack of being heard from the local office. As I mentioned, I have a good relationship with the people in the local office, but again, DFO's mandate is stocks. So anytime you bring anything like this to their attention, it's just one other page on their desk that is extra work for them. So there's definitely room for improvement between the tourism sector and sectors that necessarily don't control what we do, but affect what we do. So DFO being one of them. Transport Canada is another entity we deal with a lot. So there's definitely room for better communication there.
And so one of the other things I think that this sort of leads into is the whole concept of, there is a lot of people would explore this, I think, as an opportunity, but where does the element of, business planning and the discussion around the potential for the capital investment, because as was noted here, the cost to get into this business, it's not cheap. And people who approach it potentially with just I know that some people can approach things with we'll try it and see what happens, and to some extent that's not a terrible approach to test some waters, but at some point you need to get a bit more of a business approach around managing this stuff. So how has that approach come about for you? And 3 years to get a boat approved is pretty significant. That was the other comment here. That's I think that would be enough to be off-putting for a lot of people right off the get-go.
Yeah. So the 3 years, again, that's the toughest one I've had to overcome. So I should mention, and I forgot to mention earlier, we looked at doing a passenger vessel with an existing lobster boat. Again, if you're 12 passengers or less, it's from what I understand quite doable. I believe Chandra would likely fall under that category. I'm just assuming, but I see you shaking your head yes. So when we're certified now for 49 people, and then 2 captain and a crew, so bringing us to 51. So that's where the complications came in. So if you're looking to do passenger services with 12 or under, I would say there's definitely still plenty of rules to follow and definitely some hurdles to cross. However, it's not very specific. For example, my vessel was built with stainless steel fuel lines. It was built with fire retardant gel coat all over the inside of the vessel. It was built under specifications where this bulkhead has to be here, not here. Another big one is a collision bulkhead. That's a necessity under these rulings. So from the very stem of your vessel, a certain percentage of the length of the vessel has to have a collision bulkhead at least that far back, so that in front of the collision bulkhead, between the stem and the collision bulkhead, there's a airspace. So if you were to ever collide into something, in breaching of water wouldn't happen. So these are all factors that basically, for me, made it impossible to take my existing lobster vessel and make it a passenger vessel for over 12 people. So what happened in turn, it opened up the conversation for, is it time for a new lobster vessel? And it was. So to send my point across is, we were sort of in the market anyway for a new lobster boat, so we did just build it to those specs. Now, as I mentioned, I had to hire a company from Halifax to help me, or to help the boat builder, I guess. It was a little different because we built our own vessel. My father has a lobster boat building business. But the 3 years, that falls on being a difficult system to navigate. We had plans submitted to Transport Canada for 3 years that went through the system, went through the queue, sat on some desks in Halifax. And after the first year of the local office working with me, again, it always seems like the local offices are sympathetic to your cause. They did everything they possibly could to get me on the water while still waiting for basically this final stamp of approval. And it seemed like just every corner we had to cross, every corner we turned, there was just an extra layer of just something you had to change, something we had to do. We had to repaint the engine room. I'm remembering the fire retardant paint and the fuel lines because I actually had to go back and change those because they were missed the first time around. It wasn't told us we had to do that. So the 3 years were a frustrating 3 years of my life for sure. I don't mean to scare any of you, but there's definitely room for improvement. And I'll be as bold to say this, there's room for improvement within the entity of Transport Canada itself. That's not my problem to fix, obviously, but I don't know if it's a lack of funding or personnel or whatnot, but it's been, and again, I don't mean to pick on anyone specific, but it's been a tough one for us. So those 3 years are up, and at least I can forget about them now.
So I think, and I do know that with the sort of mid-afternoon, late afternoon panel that Lisa has organized and coordinated here, we do have representation from some of those bodies, and they're going to be able to answer some questions from some of the other participants around some of the elements of this. This was definitely part of the discussion at the first workshop similar to this that we did in Pubnico earlier in the year, and I know that there's a lot of interest, and it is a difficult navigation because there are so many different types of boats, and so just even the very nature of the fishing sector and the variety of vessels that are out there, and then looking at how they are cross-purpose potentially into another sector lends itself to lots of discussion. I want to put a couple more questions out there to you, though, that are on the back of my mind as well. From a perspective of labor and from a perspective of training, I'd like to ask the two of you sort of, you're both family operated businesses. You're relying on, others, husbands, brothers, that sort of thing, to a large extent, but you've also both mentioned your crew and to some extent some training. And so I'm interested in asking sort of, has that been, again, utilizing traditional crew that you would have had on the commercial fishing side, or do you look for different people for your tourism side of the business because of those, as you noted, both of you, the needed people skills and communication skills that are a little different in that side of things?
You want to take that one, Sandra?
Yeah, well, I think we might actually have two different perspectives on this. Because we focus on the tuna fishing, we would reach out to traditional tuna fishing experienced people. That being said, we did specifically look for somebody that would kind of fit in on our boat. So ironically, my crew is from Wedgeport. And I'm sure Lucian probably recognized Craig in one of those photos. We met our crew, Craig Wallace. John met him during the winter lobster fishery. My husband John goes down and does the winter lobster fishery down the South Shore every winter since 2009. And during one of those years, he met Craig Wallace, who is from Wedgeport, where Lucian is from. And Craig is super passionate about tuna fishing, as the same way we are. And so we asked him if he wanted to come and join our team. So he comes from out of the area. He moves into my house for about 2 months every fall. And we needed to find somebody that was going to be as dedicated to this business as we were, even though they weren't necessarily an owner, because the hours that we put in for doing this tuna chartering, they're really long. Every day is a minimum of 14 hours and sometimes as long as 20 hours, depending on how labor intensive it is at that particular time in the season. So we needed somebody that was going to get out of bed in the morning without somebody having to go knock on the door, and somebody who didn't complain when we were still working at 10 o'clock at night, or somebody who wouldn't even blink an eye if we said, okay, jump in the shower, we got to get cleaned up and we have to be at this fancy restaurant in 30 minutes because the clients want to have dinner with us. We needed somebody that was going to be okay with doing those kinds of things. And so we did go through 1 or 2 different crew before we found Craig. Once we did, he fit in with us really, just like he cares about our business as much as we do, or maybe even more. You know, he's really, in his mind, that our success is his success and vice versa. So it was we had to be fussy about who we were going to have. We also needed somebody who was going to be able to talk to the crew, and Craig can tell all kinds of stories, and he's got a great Acadian heritage and a great Acadian accent, so our clients love him. So yeah, your crew matters. When we're doing mackerel tours and stuff in the summer, it's just John and I. If we need an extra person, we take one of our kids along with us, and then our clients are peering into our fishing family. So yeah, we do think about crew that way, but I think it might be a little different for Lucian because he's doing different stuff than I am, I think.
Yeah. So as we mentioned, my business is a family operation, and one of the points we try to really set across to our customers that they feel, to get that authentic feel, is that we grew up on this island. My father lived there, or my uncles lived there, I should say. My father spent most of the year there. We built the boats. We built some of the wharves. We fished from here. So we're really trying to hammer that family point. So it just kind of so happens that my brother is a people person as well. He's an entertainer. He's a speaker. So those are factors I need. And quite frankly, for my brother, the certification came after. He was a school teacher originally by trade, wasn't fished with me off and on, but we got him certified as a legal deckhand, basically. So you got to navigate both those sides. You got to be the tour guide, you got to be the guy that people want to talk to, but you also have to be legal. Now, what happened as far as my captains that will sometimes run the boat for me if I'm not around, as you mentioned, we went out and sought out people that were certified captains. It's very easy through Transport Canada to get, I should mention this because I feel like maybe some people here were wondering about this. If you're a commercial lobster boat captain and you hold like a Fishing Master 4th class, it's quite easy to, basically the certificate of service required, it's a lesser ticket than a Fishing Master 4th class. So if you already hold one of those, it's quite easy to get a passenger certification. So a couple guys locally who are guys that are proud of their area, proud of the Tuscan Islands, we got them that certification very easily, and now they operate the boat as well. So we have two sections there. We have the crew that need to entertain. The captain does basically just drive the boat. However, when they're stopping on the islands and they're cooking and whatnot, he has to be a people person as well. So it's been fun, and it's been interesting to find that perfect person that can do meet all the safety requirements, be a fully legal captain, but be an entertainer as well. So those are the hurdles we've crossed.
That's great. I'm chuckling a little bit down here as well, Lucian, as I see that Carrie had just done a call out to Chandra saying he's sure that she just admitted that Wedgeport is the tuna capital now, and she's saying she said no way, it's not true yet.
Sorry. That's been discussed for some time now. I will mention that we now state that we are the former tuna fishing capital of the world. So I'm not sure.
Really?
Wow. Yeah. So the tuna sort of took a different trend in the 1970s, and we're a little further offshore now.
Yeah.
So we have a museum that commemorates those days, and we have a tournament that now has been back for 16 years, I think. But yeah, we definitely recognize you guys catch some nice tuna up there as well.
Well, I'm gonna
Well,
get
that's the
wrapped up.
thing. We've got the biggest. North Lake PEI, they think they're the tuna capital of the world.
Lots of competition for those designations for sure.
North Lake PEI, they think they're the tuna capital. There's a big battle going on.
Well, I know that we're going to move into our next panel in a moment, but I think I'm going to just reinforce a couple of key things that I'm hearing here, and that is that there is definitely opportunity here for people that are interested in pursuing this as an business opportunity, a further business opportunity for them to explore. One thing I noted for both of you is that you had a very easy presence to find in terms of digital footprint. So you both have websites, you both have information that makes it very appealing from a visual perspective for people to want to come and book with you. So I know that Judy Lynch was speaking earlier about the need for sort of that concept of a bit of product development, but for those on the call that are looking at developing some opportunities within their own setup, we'd be more than happy to work with you from both Tourism Nova Scotia and from the tie-in side of things to help with looking at where those gaps may be and how we can support you on the sort of how do you actually get this business set up and running, what are the fundamental requirements once the other hoops have all been jumped through and the requirements met. On the front when it comes to things like the marketing, the booking, making sure you're connected in with the travel trade and the visitor side of things. But having a very basic but well done website that offers a booking capability is a huge part of being in business now. In tourism, you cannot say that people have to call you to book anymore, because when people are interested in booking, they're wanting to book then and there. They're not waiting for 5 hours to call you the next day because you're in a different time zone, or because they're at work and it doesn't work for them later. So having that just in time, especially now as we are looking at trying to capitalize as much as possible on the domestic market, which is our immediate market that we're able to use, we need to be ready to bring that product right to their people's doorsteps and get them as quickly as possible. So just in closing, if somebody said to you, it's the best thing about being on the tourism side of things from your operation, Chandra, what would you say to some of the people on today's call? What's the best thing about it?
I'd have to say 100% the people that we meet. Everybody, as I said before, we work really closely with our clients. They all end up like family. So we've kept all these connections that we maintain over the years. And the experiences that John and I have been able to have since we got into this business through our connections in the industry are crazy. Like, we've been to Africa, Costa Rica, we've been fishing for salmon in Tofino, and like, I had a trip to Paris to go to a banquet. I mean, these are things that normally I wouldn't have been doing. But all of those people, they become like family. Like, we know their kids' names, and now we're following their kids over the years, and like, absolutely the people. It's pretty cool.
Amazing. That's great. Lucian?
Yeah, anyone who's in the tourism sector, she beat me to it, so it sounds repetitive, but the people. For every bad customer, you have 99 good ones, if not more. The people are definitely what makes it fun. At the end of the day, I seem to get a lot when I feel like I had a tour that people really enjoyed. You really go home at night and you feel like you had a fulfilling day. I've met a lot of great connections through the years. I will tip my hat to the province. It seems like the province is always willing to help us out or help promote. That's been really positive. And for those potential tourism operators out there that are considering transitioning from the commercial sector to tourism, you do already have a lot of infrastructure in place. So although I talked about the negative points, most of you likely are here because you either already have a fishing vessel or something in place that you've probably thought, since I already have this, why not pursue tourism. So I will mention there's a fulfilling feeling there, and we need more of it. So don't be afraid to dive in.
Thank you both so much for sharing your stories with us. And I think there's, like I said, a lot of interest out there. we're looking forward to continuing to work with both of you. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Lisa Fitzgerald for some discussion on the guidelines and requirements, the sort of panel of regulatory experts that she's brought together. And we'll talk about, like I said, some of those benchmarks that need to be met to move forward in the business side of things. Lisa?
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. And I think what's important too is the fact that you know, opening up your own operation always comes with a lot of challenges, and you know, we want to make sure that people have a full understanding of exactly what is involved. And sometimes there are myths that, you know, it's too expensive to get into, or you can't have you know, do certain things or whatever. So I think it's important to bring together some of the regulators to kind of share a little bit with you on you know, the fact that it is doable and that they are willing to work with the industry to find ways to get things started. So the first speaker that we have on here that can kind of share a little bit with you is Rob Freak from Transport Canada. And he will be able to provide some information. And I know that there were some previous questions that had come up just around some of the requirements. And so it's good to have somebody like Rob be able to chat a little bit about that. So I believe, Lisa, you'll probably be able to share his view, and if he has any slides that he can make that happen.
I'm up.
Yeah.
Okay, first thing, if you hear any snoring, I got to tell you that I have a buddy on here on the floor who's snoring pretty loud, and I have another one over here on the couch who's kind of snoring. So if you hear some snoring, it's my emotional support dogs that I have here, my Rottweilers. Yeah. So I'm going to try to share my screen, and I'm having some internet issues at home, and I got a new router coming. So if it breaks up, someone wave at me, and I'll try to do something different. So I'm going to try to share this screen with you. Can you guys see that now? I can't hear anybody. Oh, Lucian's nodding. Okay, here we go. Okay, so what I've got is I got a couple of slides here that we'll go through, kind of outlines a little bit of fishing vessel stuff, a little bit of crossover, some passenger stuff. I made a few notes here, so I'll address that later on, and we'll kind of move through it. So fishing vessels and passenger vessels are obviously different. Lucian kind of alluded to that. They kind of have to be different. I mean, one's a commercial fishing vessel. We've got trained crews. Everybody got an MED. Everybody spent years on the water. Passenger vessels are a bunch of tourists that come in on a bus or come in from somewhere, and they get on, and they have a higher expectation of safety. Similar to a school bus or letting your neighbor take your kids in their car. You know, if the buses are always held to a higher standard. So it's for that reason that these two different vessels have, you know, regulated differently. So you know, they have separate regulations. There's not much crossover except for something like a collision regulations, for example, which is navigation lights. They would apply to both, but you know, commercial fishing vessel and a passenger vessel are different. So to kind of go through the slides here a little bit. So just to lay down a little bit of what we do, and just so you know, and it's clear what we do. So the mission of Transport Canada is, you know, serve the public interest through safety and security, efficient, environmentally responsible transportation system. So we promote safety by regulating safety, pleasure crafts, and commercial vessels. We monitor pleasure crafts and commercial vessels, foreign vessels as well. Of course, we're not talking foreign vessels here today, but just to include it, being all inclusive. Offshore vessels meet all the safety standards. We promote safe operation, commercial fishing, and cruise, as Lucian alluded to and Chandra alluded to. So where does your industry fit in? Like I said, a vessel, we can drive to wharves all around Nova Scotia. We can look at boats, and I teach a course to our new instructors, our new inspectors every year. And I put a picture up of a fishing vessel, and I say, what kind of boat is this? And everybody says, well, it's a fishing boat. And I'll say, how do you know that? Because it looks like one. Well, that means absolutely nothing, because I bet you Lucian's boat looks like a fishing boat too, but he's carrying passengers. So you can't just go by looks. It depends on what the vessel's doing. If you carry a passenger for 1 hour out of 1 day of the year, you need to meet all of the requirements of a passenger vessel. No different if you take a passenger vessel and you want to go fishing, commercially fishing for 1 hour of 1 day of the year, then you have to make sure you meet all the requirements of a fishing vessel. So it depends on what you're doing with that vessel. So under the Canada Shipping Act, CSA 2001, it defines a pleasure craft, and basically every other vessel is considered a vessel other than a pleasure craft. We go further within the regulations themselves after we get outside of the Act, and we start talking about fishing vessels and passenger vessels, and then they get subdivided into cargo vessels and workboats and whatnot, which is where kind of aquaculture would come in. Aquaculture is a separate industry, of course, and it's similar to lobster. We don't have a type of vessel for aquaculture. They would fall in either cargo or fishing vessel, depending on what they're doing. So what is a vessel? Maybe it's very clear to a lot of people what's a vessel, but you wouldn't believe the number of times I have to answer this question when someone decides they want to take a houseboat and tie it to the wharf and not pay property tax. And so they register it as a vessel, and we have a big discussion between us and them on if it's a vessel or not. So just to make it clear, is a boat, ship, craft capable of being used solely or partially for navigation through or immediately above the water, believe it or not. We have a jurisdiction, I think it's to 4 meters above the water. So some of these planes and whatnot come into play. Had a big discussion recently about some of the float planes in Vancouver. Without regard for lack of propulsion, includes vessel as under construction. It does not include a floating object of a prescribed class. Prescribed class would be something like Halifax Harbor. We have some of the D&D buoys out there and things like that. They wouldn't be considered a vessel. So manned and unmanned barges come into play. Fishing vessel is very clearly defined. It means a vessel that is used or is to be used for commercially catching, harvesting, or transporting fish or other living marine resources. So we've got sea cucumbers being harvested. We've got all kinds of things. The difference in an aquaculture vessel, for example, they think they're a fishing vessel, but they're only carrying fish food out to a pen. So they're not carrying a fish or living marine resource. So they'd be a cargo vessel, not a fishing vessel. That's where those definitions come in. And of course, if you're carrying passengers, then you're not commercially fishing, it says here. So you can't fall under the fishing vessel requirements. So what's a passenger? This gets really, really long-winded. I'm sure we could spend the next month discussing what's a passenger. But the definition from the Canada Shipping Act says is a person carried on a vessel by the owner or operator other than the master or crew employed in the vessel or a guest if the vessel is used exclusively for pleasure. So let's stop there for a second. So obviously, if you are a crew member, you've got an MED, you're trained, you have a radio certificate, you get first aid, you get all your applicable certificates, you're a crew member. You're not a passenger. A guest is exclusively for pleasure. So Lucian decides to take the family out on the weekend on that boat, 100% pleasure, brothers and uncles and friends and sisters and aunts and cousins. That's a guest. They're all guests. They're there for no other reason, just to have fun. And you see I'm getting a low system here. So that's a guest. Other than that, the easy answer, the short answer is if you're not a guest, 100% pleasure, or you're not trained as a crew member, you're a passenger. I have these long-winded discussions with people who have donations to charities for a boat ride. You can't get on unless you do it. And then there's all different kinds of things. Basically, if you fall within the definition of a crew member, great. A guest, great. Anything else is a passenger. Easy way to figure it out. Excuse me. Obviously, there's with the Canada Shipping Act, in vessels and the nature of vessels, we can't say you've got 49 people on your boat, so you can only carry 49. So if you pass a boat sinking, you can't pick those people up. They all got to drown. We don't allow that. We allow you to take those extra people on board. So there's always a caveat in the bottom in case of incidents and accidents and whatnot. And persons of prescribed class, that's legalese from Ottawa. So they put that in almost in all cases, just in case we decide we want to add a prescribed class. So we could say all the Boy Scouts in Canada are not considered passengers, or all of the bus tours or whatever are not passengers, so that we can make that case if it ever comes up. I don't know of any in this case, but it's always put in as that kind of escape clause if we ever need to do it for whatever reason. So the responsibilities of the Act, of course, The owner's obligations, the owners, when the new Canada Shipping Act came out in 2007, they very clearly stated what the obligations of the owner of the vessel were. So you understand the regulatory requirements that apply to their vessel in operation, ensuring they're complied to at all times. 106 of the Act is something, if you've heard me talk before, you've definitely heard me say it. So the authorized rep, who is the owner of a Canadian vessel, shall ensure that the vessel's machinery, equipment meet the requirements to regulations, develop procedures for safe operation and for dealing with emergencies, and ensure the crew and passengers receive safety training. So Lucian has crew members. He has to make sure they're all up to date, they're all trained properly. And the passenger training would be a safety briefing. So they get on board. I'm sure both Kendra and Lucian do a safety briefing. You get on board, where's the life jackets, what happens in the boat, something goes wrong, what happens if someone falls overboard. That's their briefing, that's their training, being on board. So that's responsibility under the Canada Shipping Act for that. So a little bit of clarification, and I'm sure both Chandra and Lucian understand this, because I think, Chandra, you're under 15 tons, and and Lucian's obviously over. So from our point of view, that the gross tonnage is still a cutoff. So for vessels under 15 gross tons or carrying more than 12 passengers, so Chandra, if you carried more than 12, for example, you'd be an inspected vessel. You would get an inspection every year for a passenger vessel. For vessels of less than 15 gross tons carrying 12 or fewer passengers, you do not require an inspection. There's no annual inspection by us. But because the Canada Shipping Act says you're still obligated to comply, you still have the responsibility to ensure compliance. So we have a program, which I'll talk about here in a second, that'll help with that. So under 15 gross ton, no inspection. For a non-fishing vessel, so a passenger vessel, carrying less than 12, no inspection. Non-fishing vessel, under 15 gross tons, but if you carry more than 12, so the 12 comes in as well, you require an inspection. And obviously, if you're over 15, you require an inspection. So it gets a little bit interesting, confusing, I wanted to say, but that's not the right word. So it's under 15, no inspection, unless you're carrying more than 12 people. So fishing vessel to passenger vessel. So the requirements do differ, obviously. There was a question posted here while I think Lucian was talking about PFDs and whatnot. I won't get into that exactly right now unless I've got time at the end. But there's different carrying passengers, carrying kids and whatnot. We have to have railings. We have to have life rafts. We have to have life jackets for everybody on board. There's a lot more safety gear goes on. Differs from a fishing vessel. Fishing vessels pulling traps over the side. You don't want to have a 3-foot rail. So passengers are untrained. People on the water, they're untrained mariners. They come on, they expect not to fall overboard or slip and fall overboard. So there's grab rails, there's hand rails, there's things like that. Fishing vessels, people get MEDs, people spend their life on the water, they've got experience, they understand that. You don't want to get rails tore off with traps and nets and whatnot. So the requirements are different. So for a vessel under 15 gross tons carrying less than 12 passengers, small vessel regs and the construction standards for small vessels come into play. So life rafts, stability comes into play, which hasn't been traditionally for fishing vessels up until recently. Safety equipment and railings, meter-high railings. So we need an MEDA2, which is different from fishing vessels for crewing. That's where the passenger control module comes in. Obviously, a fishing vessel doesn't have passengers, so you don't need the A2. But if you have the A1 or the A3, whichever, you have to get the additional A2. SVOP could come in, limited master if you're over 5 gross tons. Because as Lucian said, the fishing master is not acceptable. It's an equivalent, but you just can't use it. You've got to go into the office. You've actually got to pick up one of those limited masters or the SVOP. So for greater than 15 gross tons, Lucian had some interesting discussions, I understand, with some of my colleagues. So, you get into standards for construction, the TP 11717, which is where the collision bulkhead comes in, the hull construction regulations, marine machinery regulations, life-saving equipment regulations, marine liability regulations, and the list goes on and on and on. So again, you got to have MEDA2. Again, you got to have limited master for less than 60 gross tons, and the fishing master, of course, on itself doesn't apply. You can go in and show it and get the limited master. I think relatively easy, as Lucian said, but it doesn't automatically let you use it. Yeah, I'll come back to that collision bulkhead later. So for vessels under 15 gross tons carrying less than 12 people, the obligation for the owner to comply is still there. And I was working in Ottawa at the time. I don't like to admit I ever worked in Ottawa, but I guess I have to. As you can tell, the chain and the t-shirt, didn't work well in Ottawa. Wearing a necktie didn't really fit my my day-to-day operation, so I had to get out of there. So I was in Ottawa at the time, and we were writing the new act, and I came to Dartmouth and I started doing inspections, and then we stopped doing inspections on these boats. And I thought that was very unfair to basically say, you're responsible, read all the regulations, find it all yourself, but you know, if you miss something, you're going to be held responsible for it. So I started working on a program that basically outlined all the requirements, and it was a cheat sheet, I called it, right? Same way I got through high school, cheat sheets. So what we did is we created that here. My buddy in BC actually was doing the same thing. We rolled it together. It got taken on nationally, and it became the Small Vessel Compliance Program. So it's for people under 15 gross ton carrying less than 12 people. Now we have it out for fishing vessels as well, which is the red one. The red labels for fishing vessels. The blue is for passenger. It's a list of questions, and with it comes supporting documentation, guidance notes that gives all the answers. Again, how I got through high school. And you fill it out, you send it in, and we review it for you, which is a bonus. We can tell you if you've done something, you know, mistaken, or you filled out a questionnaire wrong. When you get it back, you've met all your obligations, we send you a decal. So it shows that you're in compliance. It's something you can certainly market. It's marketable. It's great for people to use and say, hey, listen, we're in the program. And people do it all the time. So that's how under 15 gross ton works. It's a great support for you guys. You know, it's what we want. We want to make sure everybody's safe. It's free for us, right? If you got to buy equipment, or if you got to put rails on your boat, or if you got to fix something up, well, that cost is obviously on you. But for us, that from the point of view of Transport Canada, there's no charge whatsoever. You get the benefit of having an inspector look over your shoulder and help you out with the technical stuff. I realize not everybody's a marine technical person when it comes to regulations. So, you know, us helping you is what we're here for. So this is all available. If you Google SVCP, Small Vessel Compliance Program, Transport Canada, you'll see where it is. You can fill it out online. For the blue decal, you can, because the orange decal is new. It's not online yet. It's still paper format, but it's coming. So if you want more information on that, my contact is at the end. You can blast me off some questions. So vessels more than 15 gross tons or carrying more than 12 passengers, obviously you fall into an inspection. You need to visit the nearest Transport Canada office, request for inspection, fill that out. That tells our inspectors, you know, what kind of boat you're doing. Are you going from fishing vessel to passenger vessel? You're building a passenger vessel from scratch. Are you building one that meets both, like Lucien did? So just so we can have our homework done, so when we come out, we know what the answers to the questions are going to be. Inspector will set up a time and location to visit. They'll give you a list of deficiencies if there's anything wrong. And there is an inspection fee. There's a charge that goes with that. So a hint is in advance of contacting us, Transport Canada Marine Safety and Security, is advised that you obtain the service of a marine consultant. So a naval architect or someone to help you, navigate the regulations, see what's required, help you kind of understand, some of the costs that are going to be adding, bulkheads, as Lucien said. I'll keep going back to that one. Or if you find it's too much, again, as Lucien said, he built a vessel that does both. So, you send in the plans to us, we look at them, we mark them up, send them back. We don't really put in that how you can build a boat or what, we just review them as submitted. So operating as both a fishing vessel and a passenger vessel, that means you have to meet all the requirements for both, because one day you're fishing and the next day you're carrying passengers. So at that time, you have to meet the requirements of what you're doing. So it doesn't matter what your vessel is certified or outfitted to do, it must meet all the applicable requirements when doing that activity. So when operating as a fishing vessel, must meet the requirements of a fishing vessel, and if a passenger vessel, must meet the passenger vessel requirements. So this means checking safety equipment, crew certifications. Some people are going to have, you know, a fishing master and a limited master. You may have to change an MED from an MED A1, get the additional MED A2. So there are some things that had to be changed and added. So I'm going to go back to this for a second. Excuse me. So, you know, I've been in Transport Canada 18 years. I did work in Ottawa again. Don't hate me for it, but I did. I've sat in at the big meetings. You know, Lisa Fitzgerald, I'll just say your last name because there's a few Lisas here. Lisa's been to Ottawa and sat in on these meetings, and she sees how these regulations get written and the input, and we've used, you know, the sector council to get feedback on some of these things. And, you know, when you sit in a meeting with fishermen and fishers and we talk fishing vessels, the passenger vessel group's not in the room. They're never going to come to a fishing vessel meeting because it's a separate group. We have another passenger regulations that are being done in another room somewhere else. Fishermen have always had a big presence at these meetings. They've always been very, very loud and proud that they want a regulation that suits their vessels only. And, you know, it's conversations like these that I would like to see. A boat is a boat, right? So what's a collision bulkhead? Is it necessary for a passenger vessel? Why is it not necessary for a fishing vessel? Or a fuel hose is a fuel hose. If a fuel hose can break in a fishing vessel, why can't it break in a passenger vessel? But that logic doesn't always make it through. As you see, I'm not in Ottawa anymore, so I'm not allowed to use common sense and logic, right? Like, they don't use it up there. So it always doesn't happen that way. And it would be very good if we had smaller vessels that were just built as boats and you could use them to carry fish or you could use them to carry people. But that's not the way it is. So you know, we represent the public. The voice of the public comes in on these things. You know, we have lobby groups, we have people that represent it. And unfortunately, I guess for people here, is that there's not one regulation that addresses both. It's a separate regulation. So that's kind of the good and the bad. If you're a fisher, if you're a fisher and you want to build a boat, you have a one-stop shop, and a passenger, you can use the other set. But if you're trying to do both, you unfortunately have to make sure you read both. So a little bit of back and forth here on fishing vessels versus passenger vessels. So in the fishing vessel regs, just for people who are here as fishers, you know, we address known risks. So, you know, written procedures is new this year, last couple of years, sorry. Record keeping, safety equipment is based on vessel length. Stability is now required for new vessels, adequate stability for existing vessels, and we have a stability notice now, which is a picture notice on the wall, a label kind of thing for outline stability for all vessels, all fishing vessels. From the small vessel regulations, which is the passenger vessel side, we have safety procedures to prevent cold shock and hypothermia when water temperature is less than 15 degrees C, which I guess most of the time it is around here. Passenger safety briefing, reporting ashore number of passengers. So you're going to say, we're leaving here, we're going out around Cross Island, we'll be back at 5 o'clock. We have 12 passengers on board. And so it's a kind of a search and rescue thing. If you don't show up, where you went. Safety equipment based on number of passengers, obviously. Stabilities for all vessels and passengers. And if you're over 15 gross tons, you get into safe working practice regulations as well. Just for something else to throw in here, and I think maybe I'll throw in another point that Lucien made before, is that fishing vessels, we're looking at the phase 2 regulations, which is looking at construction. The regulations, the part 1 that came out with all the safety equipment and came out in July of 16, then it came into force a year later in July of 17. But now we're looking at the construction side of it. So if, you know, people so desire, and Lucien, I'm looking at you on the screen, you know, if you think collision bulkheads are a good thing that should be added to fishing vessels, then that's something that we can certainly, you know, look at, right? And the public, you know, through Lisa's group or individually can certainly have their voice heard if they find things that they want added to fishing vessels or don't like in fishing vessels. Now's the time to do it because we have those regulations opened up. The regulatory requirements we have are minimum. I know people will probably argue with that, but they are a minimum level of safety. If people want to add extra safety gear, they certainly can. But it is the minimum requirements that we have. So the next steps, of course, is for the regulations of fishing vessels is we're looking at vessels up to 24.4 meters in length or 150 gross tons. So that would take in both Chandras and Lucians. And we're addressing existing vessels too. And we're considering and incorporating stakeholders' comments. Here's a website if you're looking at fishing vessels. If anyone's been into the government websites, I can say this because I'm sitting in the office, but the government websites are terrible. If you want to try to find anything, it's hard to find. I don't even try to find it anymore. I Google search it. So if you Google search small fishing vessel safety, you'll pop up top search. It's a great website for fishing vessels if anyone's in there. And this is a new website, so it's a great place to find stuff. And with anything, and this is part of a presentation that I do for fishing vessels, obviously, but any owner, because the Canada Shipping Act says the owner is responsible to ensure compliance, you should read the regulations and understand them. And I know that's easy for Mr. Government Guy to say that I do regulations all day long and expecting someone to read regulations and understand them. But that's my job, is to help you. That's what Transport Canada is here for. So if you have a question, you ask us and we'll help you. That's what we're here to do. So because you're responsible, you have to understand what you're doing. And if you're starting a new operation, you need to ask all the questions and we'll help you with the answers. Because again, the onus falls on you. So again, hire a consultant to get them help you with it on the technical stuff if it's a construction thing, or call Transport Canada and ask them and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. What do I need to do? And we'll help you out. So this is me. I am a freak, can't help it. Here's my phone number, my cell, and here's my email address. Feel free to contact me. I represent fishing vessels and small vessels for all 4 Atlantic provinces. So if you got a question, feel free to pester me. And I will probably send your email off to one of the local offices to get them to help you, because obviously I can't be everywhere all the time. Right now I'm home, listening to my dog snore. But you want to use me as a one point of contact, by all means. By all means. What else have I got? PFDs. Someone asked a question about PFDs. I don't know if everybody read it or not. So I can stop sharing the screen now. Someone asked a question about PFDs. So PFDs on fishing vessels, from the fishing vessel regs, and as a vessel that operates as a fishing vessel, the requirement is to wear a PFD when there's a risk of drowning. So the mandatory wear part actually comes from the province. It doesn't come from the feds. We say wear it when there's a risk of drowning. The province says you had to wear it all the time when you're on the water. So because a fishing vessel is a workplace, and I'm not speaking for the province, I'm just because I've been at the meetings with them. Because a fishing vessel is a workplace, they say you have to wear it. Passenger vessels aren't a workplace, obviously, for passengers. And there's no requirement for them. The operator still has to wear one, but not the passengers. On the federal side, our requirements, they have to be available. They have to have railings, of course. And if you have children who could slide underneath the rail and fall in the water, then you're required to have netting or something like that to stop that. But there's no mandatory wear from our side. Lucy, if you had 3 years to get a boat approved, I would love to hear more on that later. I'm sure the conversation we shouldn't have now, but plans get sent in to our guys, and I sit next to those guys all day long, and I hear those conversations, and every once in a while I get to play manager for a couple of days, and I get to look at it and see what they're up to. It's not easy, right? And those guys sit down and look at it, and they go through it, and they check all the boxes against all the requirements. And the number of fishing vessels that are built in Nova Scotia. So there's, at the end of the year, as we start getting up towards Southwest Nova lobster time, you can imagine the boys' desks is quite piled up, and they get 30 and 40 and 50 boats set lined up. So there's 45 days we have to get back to as our service standard. Sometimes we get them out a lot sooner than that. Sometimes it takes full 45 days before we get them back. And I know that's a long time, but we've got another office in Newfoundland. So Newfoundland deals with Newfoundland, and we deal with maritime provinces. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time. So the quality of the work that comes in is how fast you get it back. There's no slag by that. That's just an honest answer. So if it comes in perfect, which of course it never does, it gets back sooner. And if it takes 2 or 3 times to come back, then it takes that amount of time. It's the guys are checking the boxes off of the regulations. They're checking the strength of the members. They're doing all the structural checks. They're doing, things like that, shaft sizes and through holes and whatnot. So it's just a process. And 3 years sounds like a long time though. So we could certainly talk about that, offline if anyone wanted to. Other than that, I think that about covers it for me. I see a bunch of questions which I haven't seen chat about. Is there anything there for me? My contact information is on the screen. If anyone wants it, I can share it again. Everyone can see that.
I think, Rob, the other thing was around your copy of your presentation.
Most certainly, I can send that to the other Lisa. Anything else for me? I'm just kind of looking at questions here. If anyone wants to jump in and ask me a question, by all means. Fishing vessel, passenger vessel, anything else you want.
I think you covered quite a bit there.
Yeah, but I'm not that good. There's usually a question. I usually don't answer everything when I go through it. There's usually 1 or 2 questions. Someone's just afraid to ask.
Is there anyone that has a question for Rob, just around the requirements if you're going in this direction? Because I can't see the other participants, only the panelists. I can't see the head nods to say yes or no.
Well, my information is there, my cell phone and my email. So call, text, email.
Yep. I do see 1 or 2 people are saying they will reach out afterwards, probably with additional questions. So,
Okie dokie.
Good. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Rob, for participating. And
love to. Thanks for having me.
No, I think that's great. We also have DFO on the line. Dwayne, are you still there? Well, if we can unmute him.
There, how's that?
Yep, you're on.
It's my first Zoom meeting outside of my phone, so just trying to get the video and the audio all set up. It's a little different. We use MS Teams all the time, so it's a little bit different. Not much to add. I worked with Lucien in the past, and I know the big question on the setting a trap that's fishable. I think that there was a decision on that prior to 2014, where the RDG made the decision not to allow any more of those fishable traps outside of the season. So I think that's an ongoing process as we're evolving into having more of those requests come in, and they're driven by folks like yourselves. I know, Lucien, you said you started from the top and the bottom, both ways, and we work with industry to make those decisions and those recommendations. So we've gone to industry tables and have not been successful gaining a lot of support on those issues. So I know there's a big frustration out there on, you're releasing all the lobster, and it's not so much of a scientific problem where science is worried about how many you keep or how many lobsters would die. It's more of a industry and other stakeholder problem where they're not at this point, and maybe it has changed, because I think I brought it up at the advisory meetings back in 2015 when I first started in this role. By the way, I'm the area chief of resource management for Southwest Nova. I don't cover the whole province, but I do cover from Halifax down through to Yarmouth. And I've had the privilege of going on the Tuscan Island tours back in possibly 2014 with the dental group. I'll need to go again because I didn't get blue nosed in with the Ironworks rum, so I'm going to need to try that one. And listening to both Lucien and Chandra, I think it does take special people, and that was the one thing that I took out of the tour, Lucien, was you and your brother, how personable you were, and that made the tour. I had been to the Tuscan Island many times, but you know, having the special people on board, being personable and connecting with the crowd. You know, we were probably 40 people. It was the dental group, so it was good, and I'm glad to hear that you're able to work with DFO to overcome some of the challenges. I know some challenges are frustrating, and there's many processes to go through. So just in general, the process for gaining access to some of these fisheries is through the NOLS, the online licensing system. And what that does, if you put in a request, it will go to the senior advisor of that species, and they will look into all the different avenues, and what you're asking, the request you're asking, will then be channeled through to the appropriate channels through the NOLS system. So that would be the first step. And then after that, I'm sure you'd have contacts on being able to reach out to some of the senior advisors. And even before that, we get calls at the area office on specific questions. But all those, it's better to go through NOLS, the online system, because it is documented, and whatever your request is in there, it is documented in there, rather than calling up. And it's more personable to call up someone and to have a chat, but I would do both to get the ball rolling on that. You get more people involved and you get the correct people through NOLS. So I think that's all I had. It is a Section 52 license for education, experimental, and scientific purposes that you get for these ventures. And there are experimental licenses issued now that will be going through in the future, or will possibly be going through in the future. I know there's work going on for the next couple of years here in Southwest Nova. May have been delayed a bit by COVID this year. There were supposed to be scientists on board for this specific project, and we're having a few issues with getting scientists on board vessels because of COVID, but we're trying to work around it with cameras and whatnot. But and those projects were all initiated by the user groups, and hopefully we can go through some of those challenges and get the ball rolling this year on these specific requests. So if there's any questions from anyone, I can't see who's on the line. I'm not sure if I can see that, but if there's any questions from anyone, you can contact me afterwards. I don't have my contacts up there, but Lucien knows how to contact me, and you can contact Lisa. She can send out my contact information, Lisa Fitzgerald, if you need it. So if there's any questions, I'll take them.
Yeah. And if you just, Dwayne, if you just put your email address and a number maybe in
Chat?
the chat, that will be in there. There's also a question here from Corey Nickerson. How do I get a copy of Section 52 that you mentioned?
Corey Nickerson? Oh, he's on the line. So maybe it was, how does he get a copy of the license?
Of the Section 52 that you had mentioned.
Okay. I can flip him a copy of the Section 52. The Section 52 is a request for a license for the three purposes: educational, experimental, or scientific.
Okay.
So I can give him a copy of the regulations. It just basically states that you can acquire a license for those reasons. But there is a form specifically for the application on Section 52. And right. I think I have Corey's email, so I can, I'll just jot that down. I'll try to flip him the form.
Yep, okay. We just had another question as well from Dale Richardson. Why do we not have a recreational license for saltwater fisheries?
That's a good question. It's been on and off for the past few years. There was a project that was happening nationally for a saltwater recreational license. There was 3 species, I forget the species now, mackerel and a few others that were going to start off with this process. And that was back in 2016, 17. There has been a change. I don't know exactly what the issue was, but there was a slowdown and an actual stop of issuing those licenses for the time being. And I'm sure it'll get back on track in the next couple of years. But I don't have an exact answer, but I know they're working on it, and they have been working on it for several years now.
And the other, I was going to ask, because I think this came up at the last session that we did in Pubnico was, and maybe this is where that whole piece that you talk about under section 52 around the educational, experimental, and scientific is looking at tying in any of the scientific work that happens with some of the traps. You know, if it was a partnership between like the FSRS or something like that. So in Lucien's case, where they're always looking for people to help out with going and you know, pulling science traps and things like that, would there ever be any opportunity to kind of marry those 2 pieces together in order to provide it with more of a, you know, of an experience, because it would be real. Like, I mean, it's a catch and release. I mean, I know I've gone myself before with the FSRS, and you know, it's a full-on experience of what they do, and people definitely like to get involved. We actually had one of Rob's bosses actually from the big city of Ottawa participate in that before, which did help the industry quite significantly by having him actually have a full eye on what really does happen aboard some of the fishing boats.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if Lucien has been down that road with the FSRS, getting maybe some recruitment traps or some other type of scientific data. And I'm not sure how much work they do down here. I know up in Eastern Nova they do a lot of work, but they're always looking to recruit and find some people to have traps out there and get some bycatch data and some recruitment data. So that may be an avenue that would satisfy both Lucien and the FSRS.
Yes. Yep. I know there was for a while they were doing quite a bit of work in the area, and actually through the Lobster Science Center there in PEI, they actually had a person that was placed in our office that did that on a regular basis, but you know, things seem to have slowed down over the last number of years, and it might be just because of a participation thing. I'm not sure for them. So any other questions for Dwayne?
I see Lucien has a question.
Oh, sorry.
I have 2 questions, Dwayne, and I hate to put you on the spot here, but while we're chatting on the topic, we may as well. Am I under the correct understanding that there's been some Section 52 licenses issued to some companies that are doing testing on different trap products, and they're actually fishing traps? Is that correct? During the off season, I should mention.
I'm not sure if they're actually fishing the traps on the. You're talking about the weak links and those type of things?
No. So there's been different style traps developed, like plastic traps or stainless steel traps, and I believe some of the reports I read, they're comparing the numbers of these new products, the retention numbers, the success rate, I should say, of the trap compared to a traditional trap. And I do know that they have done some of that work in our off season. So my point being is, I'm under the impression that these licenses were issued to these individuals who are testing products, that they're actually able to fish. So I could either make a partnership with them, or I'll ask the tough question, you know, why them and why not tourism, right? So that was my first.
No, that's a good question, Lucien, and I understand your frustration with that. And I know they have been issued experimental Section 52 licenses on the plastic traps. They were fishable, of course. Same like you, they're not allowed to bring any fish in, but it fits under the experimental. I think that the issue is with the regulations, where does it fit in to have, you know, a charter fishing a fishable trap? And I know that doesn't satisfy your needs. You need to have that trap fishing. And I remember being on the tour, and you know, you explaining that, you know, I was a fishery officer at the time, and you had your little note in there to the poachers, please don't steal my lobsters. I had to buy these from Sobeys. Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me at that time, and it still really doesn't. So just because it doesn't fit under the 3 categories specifically, I think we have to work to find some way of explaining that and making it fit under one of the categories for Section 52.
Yeah, and I would appreciate that. I'd like to throw in a little anecdotal story. I brought Tuscan Ford, a Ford dealership staff party, around 45 people, and they had some Ford executives from all over Canada on that tour. And we hauled our trap, and we had these people. We had them geared up in fishing gear with the sou'wester and the oil gear and everything, and they were really excited. And when we pulled up the trap, someone had passed by and taken the lobster, so I had no lobsters to show them. Whereas if the trap was fishing all the time in our coastal waters here, within 10 minutes, a lobster would have crawled in there, right? So I appreciate you, Dwayne, recognizing our frustration with this, and maybe just learning today there may be an avenue for us to reach out to the advisory committee, stating our frustration and maybe getting support from industry, because it sounds like the issue in the past was industry not wanting tourism operators for some reason to have these. However, I feel like if our case was brought to, you know, whether it be associations or the advisory committee, that maybe, you know, they'd have a different look at things now. I had a second question that I should have wrote down. I'll get back to that.
And while you're thinking about that, that's right, Lucy. And I think, you know, the last time it was brought to the advisory might have been 2014. So, you know, it's evolving, and maybe the industry would be more accepting now than they were back then to the same proposal, or slightly different. So, well, I think worthwhile looking into for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and maybe you know, and Chandra and I could consider that. My second question, I did remember now, is an addition to a fishing charter would be. I often get, you know, sort of stated that they ask how big are cod and how big are haddock. Sorry, we do these charters here for cod and haddock, and one of my frustrations is that I can't bring them for larger species. And I know it's been mulled over and talked about the possibility of retaining recreationally catching halibut, and I'm wondering if you have any insight on that at all.
The recreational halibut is a separate issue that presents its own challenges, where in the license condition for commercial halibut fishing is where we find the size limit, 81 centimeters, I believe. We have no mechanism of since we have no saltwater license, the earlier question, we have no mechanism of putting a size limit in the recreational. So the recreational was, I think it was 1 a few years ago, it was varied to 0. And there's no license given out, so there's no size limit in regulations. So that is one of the challenges that we're seeking. We've been asked every year since the halibut stock has been going up for a recreational license in halibut. There used to be one with no size limit, and we're also asked for derbies, halibut derbies, and those type of things, which is very challenging. And with the stock going up, you know, we have to re-examine that and maybe try to find ways to put size limits in regulations so that recreational harvesters could, you know, reach out and catch a halibut.
Well, if I could leave you with any message on that topic, is that would be a great addition to my business if I could take my customer and retain a halibut, not 10, obviously one would be fine. But just thought I'd throw that in, and thanks for your time, Dwayne.
Okay, thank you, Lucia.
Sandra, you had a question?
Yeah, I did just briefly. Dwayne, you had mentioned a few minutes ago, you were talking about a workable lobster trap not really qualifying as Section 52, which is science and research. But Lucian, how are you currently, what license are you currently doing your lobster excursion under? Isn't that a Section 52?
Yep. Yeah.
Well, that's what. So, you know, Dwayne, you had mentioned a minute ago that that a workable trap wouldn't really qualify. You know, a workable trap for tourism purposes, where you're throwing everything back, wouldn't really qualify as science and experimenting or research. But they're already doing it under the Section 52, so I really don't see the difference.
So what they're doing under Section 52, there's no fishing involved because the trap is a non-fishable trap. So the actual fishing part of it, it's more of a charter that he's doing. There's no fishing on his Tuscan Island tours, not that I know of, unless you're doing some ground fish while you're doing that.
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is that when you were referring to whether the trap is authentically operational or if it's not, and currently the only way you can do this is if your trap is not, you're indicating that there might be a difference between the two, that one would qualify as a Section 52 and the other would not. Technically, the exact same thing is happening, only that one is letting things in that you have to throw back, and the other one you're planting stuff in it. But if you want to get down to like nuts and bolts and you're talking about what is a Section 52 and what qualifies as being applicable to a Section 52, there's no difference in those two activities. Correct?
Good point. Good point. And I don't have the paperwork in front of me. I know I read it a few years ago, the briefing note for the RDG back in 2014. And I know that was one of the concerns that was brought up. And it was signed off that they would not give fishable, in the lobster industry, fishable traps. So that's something that
I can maybe add some insight here. To further Chandra's question, is that a Section 52 license is specifically designed for each user. So there are components to it that can be added, removed. Who decides this? I'm not sure. However, it was stating when I received mine, it very much explains that there can be no bait and that it has to be boarded up. I forget just the terminology. However, as I mentioned, there's currently people testing new types of lobster traps that somehow have been accepted for that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. All the Section 52s, you know, when who was it that asked earlier? Corey maybe had said he wanted to see a copy of a Section 52. Everyone is different.
They're different.
So it's not like you can just pull up a Section 52 and show him. You could show him an application for a Section 52, but mine looks nothing like Lucian's, which looks nothing like somebody else's for something else again. They're all completely different. Like the science tagging up here, their Section 52 doesn't look like mine or Lucian's. And really, if you want to get really technical, there's also a Section 7 and there's a Section 14, which will allow you to do some harvesting and science or some recreation combined with some harvesting at the same time. So there's a whole bunch of options out there that are kind of buried in DFO stuff.
No, yeah, that's right. And
I think one could be designed.
So it's not the Section 52, it's a framework that we have around what we allow in the Section 52. So I know all your proposals are all different, but how we look at those is basically the same, and what we can allow and can't allow in those licenses is the DFO framework. So.
Okay. Any more questions for Dwayne? Well, we have a comment here in the DFO Ottawa has recently approved a swordfish sport fishing proposal, which is rather big news. The proposal conduct swordfish charters and retain catch with clients on board. The pilot will be conducted 2 vessels to assess technical feasibility. So that's positive. You know, if we're looking at moving things forward, if it was allowed with swordfish. That's good news. Any other questions for Dwayne? Okay, Dwayne, thank you very much for coming on today. I know it's always useful to have somebody that works in the front line to be able to you know, to provide that information. So Dwayne has provided his email address and also his phone number. So if anybody does have any questions for Dwayne after, I'm sure he'd be willing to help out anyone if need be. So we have on the agenda, we had the School of Fisheries along with the Department of Labor, the OSH division. They weren't, neither of them were able to participate today. We had asked the OSH division to come on just to, as they are responsible for a lot of the work that's being done around COVID, and to be able to provide some information if it was necessary for those that might be looking at moving in this direction for offering tours and things like that, what kind of impact that might have in meeting some of the requirements that the division would be looking for, but we weren't able to have anyone there. We also had the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture. I believe we have Sabrina on the line to talk a little bit about the work that that they are doing in her division when it comes to you know, looking at certifying tour guides and things like that. And then the last speaker that we have is from Fairway Insurance, and hopefully he's still on. So Sabrina, did you have a few words to say about some of the work that you're doing?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Yes, I would like to take a minute and talk about what we're doing with the Fish Nova Scotia initiative.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar or not, but the province is currently has a project on the go to market sport fishing across Nova Scotia, and we'd love to have them jump on as well. We have a lot of guys right now that are part of it who promote inland, but there's a lot of for the marine division as well. Right now, we just launched our presence on social media, which is very exciting. We have a Facebook group, and we also have an Instagram account, and we're starting to populate with images of like sport fishing across Nova Scotia, guiding or different trends. We're also going to be promoting festivals, restaurants, cultural events, tourism attractions, those kinds of things to make it like an all-encompassing welcome to Nova Scotia with a focus on fishing. There's a website being built as well that'll be launched in August, and that'll be another opportunity to promote sport fishing in Nova Scotia. And if anybody's interested in becoming part of this initiative, they can take the, it's called the professionalization workshop, and it's for registered guides who would like to take it's free workshop. It's usually over a weekend. There's one coming up in August. There's also a guides course if somebody would be interested in becoming a fishing guide. There's a guides course being held in Liverpool right now. It's scheduled to be July 18th, I think, and 19th, whatever that weekend is. I can give you my email address if anybody's interested in additional information. We can talk, or I can email, or take a look at us on social media.
Is there any charge for the guides course in Liverpool?
What's that?
Is there any cost for the guides course in Liverpool?
Yes, there is. I'm not sure what the registration fees are. It's held. It's the Guides Association, Nova Scotia Guides Association, who's offering the course.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the cost is for that, but the professionalization workshop is free.
Okay. All right. Any, did you want to, maybe in the chat there, you can add your contact information and your, and maybe any of the links for some of the social media pieces if people want to take a look at some of your sites.
Oh, that's a good idea. I will do that.
Yep. Okay. No, I
And
appreciate
the guides course, it doesn't come around that often. And I think this is the last time that they're going to be offering it before like the fall season starts. So if anybody's interested at all, it may be a good opportunity to look into it and see if at all it's feasible.
Okay. I had a question here from Dale Richardson. Is it for fresh water?
The guides course?
Yeah.
It's for everybody.
Okay. So it would
The
be
course
for
itself, technically, historically, the guides course has been offered to freshwater guides, but we're expanding it to include marine so that they can take part of the Fish Nova Scotia initiative as well.
Okay. Good to hear. Any other questions for Sabrina? Okay, and she'll add her her information just in the chat for people to write that down if need be. If anybody wants to contact her if they're interested in any of the courses that
Yeah,
are.
this is really the beginning of the initiative, so it's a great time to jump on if you're at all interested and you have some content to add to our website. Asking those influencers across the province for pictures and stories and just to promote and highlight everything that Nova Scotia has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. No, thank you very much, Sabrina, for sharing that information with us. Alan, are you still Alan Griffith? If you're from Fairway Insurance, can speak a little bit about insurance possibilities for tour boat operations.
Hi, Lisa. I am here.
Okay, good.
I was a little surprised when I believe it was Rob was talking about the DOT requirements for vessels, that he didn't mention the liability portion of it that is required by law to have to carry passengers, and it is $250,000 for every approved passenger you have on board. So if you're carrying 20 passengers, you'd have to carry minimum 5 million of passenger liability. And therefore, if it's more than that, you just take the number of passengers and multiply it by 250,000, of course. Also, in the marine world of insurance, it doesn't cross over into anything that happens off the boat. So your protection and indemnity, which is your marine liability, only covers your passengers while they're on the boat. So if you have your own wharf or are using a wharf that you're required to have a CGL policy for, you have to end up purchasing 2 different types of insurance. Just a couple of things you might want to think about if you're looking at going into the tourism section of this. What I can do is I can post my email address as well as my contact information. If anybody has any questions on what the requirements are, I'd be more than happy to talk to them about it.
Lisa, if I may.
Yep.
I just thought I'd throw in, I pointed out some of the negative points I feel like to the tourism industry. I would like to mention when it comes to liability and insurance, disregarding price, if we're not talking how much it costs, it's one of the easier hurdles to overcome. For me, at least, it was as simple as walking into my local marine office, asking them for insurance. It seems like everyone that hops on my boat or that talks to me about the ins and outs of my business, seem to think, the insurance must be real serious. And quite frankly, obviously it's an important factor, but it's one of the easiest things to do. You set up a policy, as Mr. Griffiths mentioned. We have a separate policy for when they disembark on my private wharf on Big Tuscany Island. It's not covered, but for like someone like myself that has a vessel for commercial fishing, the vessel itself is still insured the same way. There's no other additional insurance for the vessel. Replacement value, just passenger liability. It's actually an easy one.
Good. No, that's great to hear, because I know that's one of the things that that people will say is that, you know, you can't get into this because the insurance is too high. So that's good to hear.
I
And
didn't say it was cheap.
yeah.
I didn't say it was cheap.
Oh, sorry. No, said it was doable. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't ask you how many tours you had to offer in order to make it pay. Any questions for Alan?
Oh, I think somebody has an insurance. Is it Sabrina?
It is, yes. I have a question. A lot of the guides that I talk about, in order to participate within the Fish Nova Scotia initiative, they have to be registered as well as insured, and that's fine. But a lot of the guides have questions about insurance policies that would include transportation for clients to the destination, and they seem to have a hard time finding policies that would the guiding and transportation. Is that something that you run into, Alan?
Yes, that's you're ending up in the insurance world, crossing over into 2 or 3 different types of insurance. You're looking at a commercial general liability policy as well as a transportation policy. Therefore, you're involving a automobile or a bus, whatever the case may be, and it's runs into 2 or 3 different types of insurance. Most of these things can be solved. It's just a matter of going to a number of different insurance companies and getting it. And as Lucien said, it's not cheap. You tend to throw enough money at it, it will solve itself, but it does take a little bit of time to sort it out.
Okay, so is it possible to develop some kind of policy, or because the insurance that they get, most guys get it's out from outside of the province because they can't find anything here to cover their needs.
You mean the insurance companies or brokerages can't solve it?
I think insurance companies, or maybe I'm not sure. I'm not sure which venue they go through. I just get the feedback from them.
Yeah, because I mean, we deal with most of that types of insurance here at Fairway. A lot of the insurance companies that we deal with are either in London themselves or in Western Canada, especially when you're starting to talk about tours or adventure tours. Most of those are out of Western Canada.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Alan? I see Alan has provided his phone number along with his email address in case anybody wants to connect with him after the session if they have further questions that they might have. Okay. Not seeing anything else coming up. So we'll just, we're moving into the end of the agenda. I think we're a little bit over time, but I think there was some really good discussion that we didn't really want to stop. You know, it's you know, we have lost a few people on the call, but you know, you start getting Zoom fatigue, so so people and other commitments. So it's you know, we're close to the end here. Is there any questions that anyone else might have that they weren't able to ask of any of the speakers? Okay. Lisa, did you want to talk about next steps, maybe?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. So I think, you know, from here, there's a few things that are going to move forward. The first thing will be that we will work with Lisa Fitzgerald's team to coordinate a package that has the presentations that were provided today that are able to be shared, the contact details that have also been provided, And we'll follow up with our participants today with that information so that you have something coming to you via email that you can use as follow-up connection and networking information. We're also going to include an evaluation form in there. We would really appreciate it if you would take a few minutes and provide us with some feedback around where to go from here for some of you. Some of you might have some specific requests for information, resources, or support. I know Judy Lynch from Tourism Nova Scotia is still on the call, and she very kindly, as noted, has provided a lot of resources around experience development. Hi, Judy. I know you're managing your bandwidth very carefully there. And so a couple of things from that. The Experience Development Toolkit, we will definitely include that with that link of information from Judy. The other thing I want to point out is that we actually have access to a lot of great information around development of tours and tour guide credentialing. There's been discussion here about different types of credentialing. And from our front, there is an actual national credential that is available for people that work in the tourism sector that we manage for Nova Scotia. And there are elements of that that are available for things like tour guide, as well as we do have certification for freshwater angling guides for those of you that are more on the land-based fishing side of things as well. So Tyans is actually feeling, believe it or not, in the midst of this pandemic, that our industry is very resilient. Our recent survey that we did with our operators has told us that while they are in many cases struggling, that there is a lot of still optimism that we will rebuild, we will come back from this. We have opportunity to reinvent ourselves to some extent about what we're all about from a tourism perspective, but that fundamentally the things that make us appealing and attractive to visitors are the things that are going to hold us in the long term. And to a large extent, that gets back to our connection to the sea, our connection to the water, our seafaring heritage, and the role that the aspect of seafood plays in our culinary experiences as well, which has been mentioned a few times here this afternoon. So from our end of things, before I hand over to Lisa for a final farewell, I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers today. It's a lot of content to cover in an afternoon. We really appreciate the fact, as Lisa said, there's Zoom fatigue that happens, and I want to just do a big shout out to all of the panelists for participating today and for sharing their expertise. So thank you so much for doing that, and hope that you feel good about contributing to what may be the next generation of tourism operators coming onto the fold. Lisa?
No, thank you for that, Lisa. I think the session, even though this is the second time that we've done this, I think it was great that we had a wide variety of people on the call from all over the province, and I think it is hard on a Zoom call to get as much engagement as possible. But I think you know we'll continue to offer these sessions to the industry and to help make those connections. You know, there has been a huge reinvestment into the province to ensure that you know, people are finding ways to be creative when it comes to entrepreneurial work. So if there's anything we can do to help to move that along, I think that's what we're here for. So no, I would just leave that. We will send out the information as you know, from the presentations and things like that, but we'll sign off from here.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Wishing you a wonderful night, and don't forget, for any further information related pandemic specific, tourismstrong.ca is our site. Thanks all.
Thanks all. Have a good day. See ya.